What happens when a single mistake connects two strangers who were never meant to meet? A billionaire businessman, a struggling young woman chasing her dreams, one airport, one suitcase, one life-changing mix-up that neither of them saw coming. In the next 2 hours, you'll witness a story about fate, connection, and the unexpected moments that change everything. This isn't just about lost luggage. It's about two people discovering what they've been missing all along. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments below. I want to see how far this story travels. And don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe because you won't want to miss what happens next. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. The harsh fluorescent lights of LaGuardia Airport buzzed overhead as Lucas Hale moved through Terminal C with the kind of purposeful stride that made people instinctively step aside. At 32, he'd mastered the art of commanding space without saying a word. His charcoal suit was perfectly tailored, his leather briefcase worth more than most people's monthly salary, and his expression carried that particular blend of exhaustion and determination that came from building an empire while raising a daughter alone. He'd been in Boston for 72 hours straight, 3 days of back-to-back meetings that would secure a merger worth $200 million. 3 days of lawyers, accountants, and executives all waiting for his approval, his signature, his vision. 3 days away from the only person who really mattered. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out without breaking stride. "Dad, when are you coming home? Miss you." The message from his daughter Sophie, sent through her tablet under the watchful eye of their nanny, Mrs. Chen, made something in his chest tighten. She was 7 years old and already too familiar with his absences. He typed back quickly. "Plane just landed, sweetheart. Home in an hour." "Pizza for dinner?" The response came immediately. 3 heart emojis and a pizza slice. Lucas allowed himself the briefest smile before his attention shifted back to the task at hand, getting home. The baggage carousel had just started moving, and passengers crowded around it like they were afraid their belongings might vanish if they didn't maintain visual contact. He stood back slightly, letting the chaos flow around him. Years of first-class travel had taught him patience in these moments. His luggage would come. It always did. Black Toomey suitcase, monogrammed LH on the side, containing everything he'd needed for the trip. 2 suits, dress shirts, his backup laptop, important contracts that couldn't be trusted to digital signatures alone. The carousel groaned and turned. Bags tumbled down the chute in that particular graceless way luggage has of making every journey look violent. Lucas watched, waited, and there it was. Black Toomey suitcase, expensive looking, the right size. It rolled past him once, he was checking his phone again, a brief email from his CFO, and when it came around the second time, he reached out and pulled it smoothly from the carousel. The weight felt right. The handle fit his grip the way it always did. He didn't check the tag. Why would he? He'd made this trip dozens of times. Same routine, same luggage, same everything. Efficiency was the foundation of his success, and efficiency meant not second-guessing the obvious. Lucas Hale turned and walked toward the exit, pulling the suitcase behind him with the confidence of a man who'd never had a reason to doubt the small details of his carefully controlled life. He had no idea he'd just made a mistake that would unravel everything. But 70 feet away, near the far end of the same carousel, Eliza Moore pressed her worn sneakers against the polished airport floor and tried to ignore how out of place she felt. She'd never been good at airports. They reminded her too much of the distance between who she was and who she wanted to become. Everyone around her seemed to move with such certainty, such belonging. Designer bags, confident strides, the easy way they pulled out credit cards without calculating the cost. Eliza had budgeted every single dollar of this trip. The training program in Boston, a 3-day intensive on digital marketing strategies for small businesses, had cost $600. She'd saved for 5 months, picking up extra shifts at the coffee shop where she worked mornings, doing freelance graphic design work late into the night. The flight had been the cheapest she could find, 2 connections and a 6-hour total travel time. The hotel had been a Holiday Inn 20 minutes outside the city because anything closer was impossible. But she'd done it. She'd shown up. She'd learned. She'd networked with people who ran actual companies, who talked about quarterly projections and growth strategies like it was normal, achievable. For 3 days, Eliza had allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she could build something real. Something that would finally pull her out of the constant cycle of working multiple jobs just to stay afloat. Now she just needed to get home to Queens, back to her studio apartment where rent was due in 8 days, and her savings account had exactly $43 left in it. Her suitcase appeared on the carousel, black, mid-range brand, a little scuffed from years of use. She'd bought it at a discount store when she was 19, when she'd first moved to New York with dreams bigger than her budget. It had traveled with her through every small hope and setback since then. Eliza grabbed it quickly, relief flooding through her. For a moment at the hotel that morning, she'd been paranoid about forgetting it in the room. She'd checked 3 times, even though everything she owned fit into that single bag. The handle felt familiar in her grip. The weight was right. Clothes, the binder full of notes from the program, her laptop that was 5 years old but still functional, the small envelope of emergency cash she always kept hidden in the interior pocket. She pulled the suitcase toward the exit, already calculating the subway route home. A train to the E-train to the walk-up 4 flights because the elevator in her building was broken again. Eliza Moore had no idea that the life she was pulling behind her wasn't hers at all. The realization came to Lucas Hale at 9:47 p.m. in the quiet of his home office in Tribeca. Sophie was asleep. They'd had their pizza, half pepperoni for her, half vegetable for him, and watched exactly 1.5 episodes of her current favorite show before her eyes started drooping. He'd carried her to bed, something that wouldn't be possible much longer given how fast she was growing, and she'd mumbled, "Love you, Daddy," into his shoulder before sleep took her completely. Mrs. Chen had gone home. The apartment was silent except for the distant hum of the city beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. Lucas had poured himself 2 fingers of bourbon, his one allowable indulgence after trips like this, and brought his suitcase into the office to unpack. He had a morning meeting at 8. He needed to review the contracts one more time, make sure every detail was exactly as discussed. He set his glass on the mahogany desk and unzipped the suitcase. The first thing he saw was fabric. Blue fabric. Cotton, not the wool blend of his suits. His brain stuttered, trying to make sense of it. He pulled the fabric out. A sweater. Women's. Soft, well-worn, the kind of thing someone wore for comfort rather than style. Lucas stared at it. Beneath the sweater were more clothes, jeans, t-shirts, everything neatly folded with a care that spoke of limited space and the need to make everything fit. No designer labels, no tailored anything. His hands moved faster now, pulling items out with growing confusion that was rapidly shifting towards something else. A toiletry bag, drugstore brands, travel-sized. A binder full of handwritten notes, the kind taken during lectures or presentations. A laptop that had to be at least 5 years old, held together with a strip of duct tape along one corner. And then, at the bottom, a small envelope. Lucas opened it carefully. Cash. Small bills. 20s and 10s, counted and bundled together. He didn't count it, but he could tell it wasn't much. Maybe $300. The kind of money someone kept for emergencies, tucked away carefully because it represented security. Next to the envelope was a notebook, smaller, personal. Lucas hesitated. This felt like crossing a line. But the suitcase was already open, its contents already scattered across his office floor, and he needed to understand what had happened. He opened the notebook. The first page was dated 3 months ago. Goals. Next 6 months. Save $800 for training program. Complete digital marketing certification. Build portfolio of 5 real client projects. Launch own consulting business by end of year. Pay down credit card to under $2,000. Each item was written in clean, careful handwriting. The first goal had a check mark beside it, added in different ink, like it had been a celebration when it was finally achieved. Lucas turned the page. More goals, more plans. Budgets written out in detail. How much for rent, for food, for the subway card. Calculations about how many extra shifts would be needed to save a specific amount. Notes about potential clients, small businesses she'd contacted, follow-up dates carefully recorded. Every page was filled with effort, with hope, with the kind of grinding determination it took to build a life from nothing. Lucas had built his own company from the ground up. He understood ambition, understood the drive it took to create something, but he'd had advantages, family money for the initial investment, connections from his Ivy League education, the kind of safety net that meant failure wouldn't destroy him. This was different. This was someone fighting for every inch of progress without a net at all. He sat back in his chair, the notebook still in his hands, and felt something unfamiliar settle in his chest. The suitcase wasn't his, which meant somewhere in the city, someone had his suitcase. Someone who'd just found expensive suits, a laptop worth $4,000, and contracts containing information worth millions. Lucas reached for his phone, then stopped. His business card. It was in the interior pocket of his suitcase, in the leather card holder he always kept there. If this person, this woman, based on the clothes, had any sense, she'd find it. She'd reach out. The question was what she'd do with everything else she'd found. Lucas looked at the envelope of cash again, the worn clothes, the evidence of a life built through sheer will. His instinct, the instinct that had made him successful, was to assume the worst, to protect himself, to take action immediately. But something about the notebook stopped him. Every page showed planning, responsibility, someone who thought carefully about every decision. Lucas made a choice that surprised him. He'd wait. 24 hours. If he didn't hear anything by then, he'd take action. He gathered the clothes carefully, folding them the way they'd been folded, and placed everything back in the suitcase. The notebook he left on his desk. Then he picked up his bourbon, walked to the window, and looked out at the city lights while he waited to see if his instinct about human nature was right or catastrophically wrong. Across the city, in a fourth-floor walk-up in Astoria, Eliza Moore was having her own moment of discovery. She'd gotten home at 8:30, exhausted from the travel and the 3 intense days in Boston. The apartment had welcomed her with its familiar shabbiness. The radiator that clanked, the refrigerator that hummed too loudly, the view of the building next door that was so close she could practically reach out and touch it. But it was hers. She'd fought for every month of rent, and it represented independence in a way that mattered more than luxury. Eliza had microwaved leftovers, pasta from 3 days ago that was still safe to eat, and eaten while checking her email. 2 potential clients had responded to her inquiries. Small businesses, nothing glamorous, but they were interested in talking about their social media presence. It was a start. After eating, she'd showered quickly, the water never got quite hot enough, and changed into her sleep clothes. Then she'd pulled the suitcase onto her bed to unpack. The zipper had caught slightly. She'd had to work it a bit, which was normal. The suitcase was old and temperamental. When it finally opened, Eliza froze. The first thing she saw was fabric. Expensive fabric, the kind that felt different even before you touched it. Her brain went blank. She lifted the top item carefully. A suit jacket. Charcoal gray, perfectly tailored, the label inside reading a brand name she recognized from department store windows she'd never walked into. Beneath it was a dress shirt, then another suit, then carefully rolled ties. Eliza's hands started shaking. This wasn't her suitcase. She pulled everything out rapidly now, her heart hammering. A laptop, sleek, thin, the kind that cost thousands. A leather toiletry bag containing high-end products. A watch that looked expensive enough to be fake, except everything else suggested it was devastatingly real. And then she found the contracts. Thick documents, official-looking, with law firm letterheads and dense text about mergers and acquisitions. Numbers that made her dizzy, signatures needed, dates that were soon, within days. Eliza sat back on her bed, surrounded by someone else's life, and felt panic start to set in. This was bad. This was really, really bad. Someone important, someone wealthy, someone who probably had lawyers, was missing these things. And they had her suitcase, which meant they had her information, her address probably, her... She stopped, forced herself to breathe. Panicking wouldn't help. She needed to think clearly. Eliza stood up and started searching through the suitcase more methodically. There had to be something with a name, a way to contact whoever this belonged to. She found it in an interior pocket, a leather card holder containing several business cards. Lucas Hale, CEO. Hale. Enterprises Mobile. Number. Email. Email. The address listed was in Tribeca. Of course it was. Eliza looked around her tiny apartment, the peeling paint, the radiator that barely worked, the furniture from thrift stores and sidewalk finds. Then she looked back at the suitcase full of items that probably cost more than everything she owned combined. Different worlds. Completely different universes. And somehow, through a stupid mistake at an airport carousel, those worlds had just collided. She could call. But it was late, past 10 p.m., and calling a stranger's cell phone at this hour seemed wrong. Email felt too impersonal for something this serious. Eliza sat on her bed and pulled out her phone. She opened her messaging app and carefully typed in the number from the business card. Her thumbs hovered over the screen. What did you even say in this situation? She started typing. Mr. Hele, I believe we accidentally switched suitcases at LaGuardia tonight. I have your luggage and presumably you have mine. I'm very sorry for the confusion. I found your business card and wanted to reach out immediately. I haven't disturbed any of your belongings. Everything is exactly as I found it. Please let me know the best way to return your items to you. I'm in Queens and can meet wherever is convenient for you. Again, my apologies for this mix-up. Eliza Moore. She read it 3 times, deleted parts, rewrote them, tried to strike the right tone between professional and apologetic without sounding desperate or suspicious. Finally, she hit send. Then she sat in the silence of her apartment, surrounded by evidence of a life so different from hers it might as well be fiction, and waited. Lucas's phone buzzed at 10:23 p.m. He was still standing at the window, the bourbon now empty, his mind running through scenarios and contingencies the way it always did when facing unknowns. He looked at the screen. Unknown number. A message. He opened it and read. Something in his shoulders relaxed. The tone was perfect, respectful, clear, responsible. No demands, no panic, no suggestion that she'd consider doing anything other than the right thing. His instinct had been correct. Lucas read the message again, paying attention to the small details. The careful language, the immediate acknowledgement, the offer to meet wherever was convenient for him, not an insistence on her own terms. He thought about the notebook on his desk, the goals carefully written out, the budgets calculated down to the dollar. This made sense. He started to type a response, then stopped. It was late. This could wait until morning, but something made him continue. Maybe it was the relief of knowing his contracts and laptop weren't lost or in malicious hands. Maybe it was curiosity about the person behind the carefully folded clothes and determined goals. Miss Moore, thank you for reaching out. I appreciate your honesty and your quick response. I do have your suitcase, and I want to assure you that I haven't disturbed your belongings either. I understand this must be stressful. Rather than meeting somewhere, would you be comfortable if I arrange for the suitcases to be exchanged tomorrow? I can have my assistant coordinate a courier service to pick up my luggage from you and deliver yours at the same time. Would that work? No need for either of us to go out of our way. Lucas Hale. He sent it before he could overthink it. The response came in less than 2 minutes. That would be very helpful, thank you. I'm available anytime tomorrow afternoon. I work mornings, but will be home after that. I really appreciate your understanding about this situation. Professional, efficient. But he could read the relief between the lines. Perfect. My assistant will contact you in the morning to arrange the details. Have a good evening, Miss Moore. You too, Mr. Hale. And again, I'm very sorry about the mix-up. Lucas set his phone down and looked at the suitcase sitting in his office. The simple, logical thing was to follow through exactly as he'd said. Arrange the courier exchange. Never think about it again. But he found himself picking up the notebook one more time, reading through the goals and plans. Looking at the evidence of someone working 3 jobs to save $600 for a training program that might help her build something better. He thought about Sophie, asleep down the hall, about the life he'd built for her, the opportunities she'd have simply by being born into his world, about how different things might have been if he'd started from where this Eliza Moore was starting. Lucas closed the notebook and made a decision that wasn't entirely logical, wasn't entirely what he'd normally do. Tomorrow, he'd arrange the exchange, but maybe, just maybe, he'd deliver it himself. The next morning arrived with the kind of crisp autumn sunlight that made New York feel almost manageable. Eliza woke at 5:30 a.m., same as always. Her body didn't know how to sleep in anymore, even when she'd worked a full week. Years of multiple jobs had trained her to function on less rest than most people considered humane. She made coffee in the French press she'd bought secondhand, the one small luxury she allowed herself. Good coffee made everything else bearable. While it brewed, she looked at the suitcase still sitting on her bed, exactly where she'd left it last night. In the morning light, it looked even more expensive, even more out of place. She checked her phone. No new messages from Lucas Hale, but it was only 5:47 a.m. His assistant probably didn't start work until at least 9. Eliza got ready for her morning shift at the coffee shop, Brewhaven, a small place in Astoria that catered to the before-work crowd. She'd been there for 3 years, long enough that the owner trusted her to open most mornings. It wasn't glamorous, but it was steady income, and the tips were decent when she worked quickly. She left the apartment at 6:15, leaving the suitcase carefully zipped and placed safely in the corner of her room. The door had 2 locks, which suddenly felt important in a way it hadn't before. The morning shift was busy, exactly as expected for a Thursday. Commuters rushing in, ordering their usual drinks in the clipped tones of people running late. Eliza moved through the routine efficiently. Espresso shots, steamed milk, the practiced rhythm of making drink after drink while keeping the line moving. Her coworker James handled the register while she worked the machines. "You're quiet today," he said during a brief lull around 8:30. "The Boston thing go okay?" Eliza wiped down the espresso machine. "Yeah, it was good. Really good, actually. Learned a lot." "So why do you look stressed?" She hesitated. James was a good guy, an NYU student working his way through college, but this situation felt too strange to explain. "Just tired. Travel always wears me out." He accepted that easily and moved on to the next customer. At 9:42 a.m., during another rush, Eliza's phone buzzed in her back pocket. She couldn't check it, not while making 3 lattes simultaneously, but she felt it and wondered if it was the assistant arranging the pickup. The morning shift ended at 11. The owner, Maria, came in to take over the afternoon. "Good work today, mija," Maria said, reviewing the morning receipts. "Tips are in the jar." Eliza counted them quickly. $43. Better than average. She added it to the small bills in her wallet and felt the familiar calculation running in her head. Rent due in 7 days, still short by about $200. But if she picked up the freelance project she'd been offered and worked this weekend, she pushed the calculation aside, one crisis at a time. Outside, she finally checked her phone. The message wasn't from an assistant. "Ms. Moore, I've decided to handle the exchange personally rather than sending a courier. I'll be in your area this afternoon around 2 p.m. if that works for you. I can text when I'm close and we can meet outside your building. Does that work?" Lucas Hale. Eliza stared at the message. Lucas Hale himself was coming to Queens, to her neighborhood, to her building with the broken elevator and the graffiti in the stairwell. Her first instinct was embarrassment. Her second was confusion. Why would a CEO personally deliver luggage when he could easily send someone else? Her third instinct, quieter but persistent, was curiosity. She typed back, "That works. I'll be home. My address is address. Thank you for being so accommodating about this." His response came quickly. "See you at 2. Eliza looked at the time. It was 11:23. She had 2.5 hours. She walked home quickly, her mind racing. The apartment was clean. She'd made sure of that before leaving for Boston. But clean was relative when the building itself was falling apart. There wasn't much she could do about the peeling paint or the radiator that looked like it belonged in a museum, but she could make sure her space was as presentable as possible. Back home, she moved through the small apartment with focused efficiency. Dishes washed and put away. The few books and papers on her desk organized neatly. The secondhand couch straightened, the mismatched throw pillows arranged to look intentional rather than accidental. The suitcase she placed by the door, ready to hand over immediately. At 1:45, she changed clothes. Not into anything fancy, she didn't own anything fancy, but into her best jeans and a simple black sweater that didn't have any stains or worn spots. Then she waited. At 1:58, her phone buzzed. "Just parked. Outside your building." Eliza took a breath, grabbed the suitcase, and headed down. But Lucas sat in his car, a black Range Rover that probably cost more than most people in this neighborhood made in a year, and looked at the building. 4 stories. Brick facade that had seen better decades. Windows that didn't quite match. The kind of building that housed people working their way up, or, more often, people trying not to fall further. He'd told himself he was doing this out of efficiency. He had a meeting at 4 p.m. in Manhattan, and Queens was on the way if he took the Midtown Tunnel route. Delivering the suitcase himself would save time compared to coordinating a courier service, but that wasn't entirely true. The real reason was sitting on his passenger seat. The notebook. He'd brought it with him, planning to put it back in her suitcase before handing it over. But he'd read it again this morning, and something about the goals, the determination, the evidence of someone fighting so hard for opportunities he'd taken for granted, it had stayed with him. Sophie had asked him at breakfast why he seemed distracted. He told her he was just thinking about work. She'd looked at him with those too perceptive 7-year-old eyes and said, "You're always thinking about work, Daddy." And she was right. Movement at the building entrance pulled his attention back. A young woman emerged carrying a black suitcase. She looked around briefly, spotted his car, and walked toward it. Lucas got out. Eliza Moore was smaller than he'd expected. Maybe 5'5", slender in the way people got when they worked too much and ate too little. Dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. No makeup. She had the kind of face that was pretty when she wasn't tired, but right now exhaustion showed in the slight shadows under her eyes. She approached with the suitcase, her expression a careful mix of polite and professional. "Mr. Hale?" she asked, even though she clearly knew who he was. "Yes. Eliza?" He extended his hand. She shook it. Her grip was firm, confident, despite the obvious disparity in their circumstances. "I'm so sorry again about the confusion," she said, gesturing to the suitcase. "Everything's still in there exactly as I found it. I didn't touch anything beyond looking for your contact information." "I appreciate that," Lucas said. He opened the back of his car and pulled out her suitcase. "And this is yours." They exchanged luggage awkwardly, like people completing a drug deal in a parking lot. Eliza immediately unzipped hers slightly, just to confirm. Lucas saw the relief flood her face when she saw her own clothes. "Thank God," she said quietly. Then, remembering herself, "Thank you for bringing this personally. You really didn't have to do that." "It was on my way," Lucas lied smoothly. A moment of silence settled between them. The appropriate thing to do was say goodbye, get back in his car, return to his world while she returned to hers. But Lucas found himself speaking instead. "The training program in Boston," he said. "Digital marketing?" Eliza looked surprised. "You read my notebook?" "No," he said quickly. Then more honestly, "Well, I saw the first page. I wasn't trying to invade your privacy, but I needed to understand what had happened. I apologize if that was inappropriate." She relaxed slightly. "It's okay. I looked through your stuff too. Kind of hard not to when you're trying to figure out whose suitcase you have. Did you find what you were looking for from the program?" "Yeah," Eliza said, and for the first time she smiled, small but genuine. "Yeah, I think I did. It was really good. Expensive, but worth it." Lucas thought about the $600 goal with the checkmark next to it. 5 months of saving. "What are you planning to do with it?" he asked. "The training." Eliza shifted the suitcase handle in her grip. "Start my own thing. Small business consulting, social media management. There are so many local businesses that need help with their online presence but can't afford the big agencies. I thought maybe I could fill that gap." It was the way she said it, not with arrogance, but with the quiet confidence of someone who'd identified a real need and believed she could meet it. That made Lucas reconsider his next meeting. "Are you hungry?" he asked suddenly. Eliza blinked. "What?" "There's a restaurant a few blocks from here, Brazilian place. I looked it up before coming. Good reviews. I haven't eaten lunch, and I'm assuming you haven't either given your work schedule." He watched her process the offer, saw the confusion and wariness cross her face. "Mr. Hale, you really don't need to—" "Lucas," he interrupted. "And I know I don't need to. I'm asking if you'd like to. Consider it a thank you for being honest about the suitcase mix-up." Eliza stared at him for a long moment. He could see her calculating, trying to understand the angle, the reason behind this. Finally, she said, "Okay." The word came out uncertain, like she wasn't sure she'd actually said it. "Okay," Lucas repeated. "I'll drive." "I can walk. It's only a few blocks." "Eliza," he said gently. "It's fine. Get in the car." She did, though he noticed how carefully she placed her suitcase in the back seat, like she was afraid of damaging his expensive vehicle. The drive was short, less than 5 minutes. Neither of them spoke much. Lucas focused on the road while Eliza looked out the window, her hands folded in her lap. The restaurant, Casa Brazil, was a small place tucked into a corner building, the kind of spot that served authentic food to a neighborhood clientele rather than Instagram-hunting tourists. They parked and went inside. The lunch rush had passed, leaving the space half empty and quiet. A hostess seated them at a table near the window. Menus appeared. Water glasses were filled. Lucas watched Eliza look at the menu and saw her eyes go to the prices first, saw the small calculation happening behind her expression. "Order whatever you want," he said quietly. "This is on me. Mr. Hale." "Lucas." "Lucas," she corrected, "you really don't have to buy me lunch. The suitcase thing was just an honest mistake." "I know, but I'm hungry. You're probably hungry, and I'm curious about your business plans. Consider this a networking lunch." That reframed it in a way that seemed to make her more comfortable. Networking was professional. Networking had purpose. "Okay," she said again. They ordered. He got the feijoada. She chose a smaller chicken dish that was one of the less expensive options. He noticed but didn't comment. When the waitress left, Lucas leaned back in his chair and studied the young woman across from him. "Tell me about your background," he said. "How did you end up in New York?" Eliza took a sip of water, buying time to formulate her answer. "Small town in Pennsylvania originally," she said. "Came to New York when I was 19. Had some family issues that made staying there not really an option. Figured if I was going to start over, might as well do it somewhere with actual opportunities." The way she said family issues with that small pause told Lucas not to ask for details. "And you've been working multiple jobs since then?" "Pretty much. Coffee shop, freelance design work, occasional catering gigs when I need extra cash. It's not glamorous, but it pays the bills. Mostly." "The training program? That's your way out?" Eliza met his eyes directly. "That's my way forward. I don't know about out, but yeah, I'm tired of just surviving. I want to build something." Lucas nodded slowly. He understood that drive. He'd felt it himself once, before success had become routine. "What made you choose digital marketing specifically?" "I was already doing it," Eliza explained, "just informally. A few local businesses I'd helped as favors, updating their social media, making their websites less terrible. They started getting more customers, and I realized there was a real need there. These aren't companies that can hire agencies charging $10,000 a month, but they still need help. I could be that help. Charge rates they can afford while still making enough to actually live on." The food arrived, interrupting the conversation. They ate for a few minutes in companionable silence. Then Lucas asked, "What's your biggest obstacle right now, besides capital?" Eliza looked surprised by the directness of the question. "Credibility," she said after a moment. "I have ideas and some experience, but no official clients yet. No case studies to show. When you're pitching yourself to business owners, they want proof you can deliver. It's a catch-22. Can't get clients without a portfolio. Can't build a portfolio without clients. So build one," Lucas said simply. "That's what I'm trying to do." "No, I mean build it now. Pro bono work. Choose 3 businesses, small, local, the kind that would benefit from your services but could never afford them otherwise. Offer to work for free for 2 months. In exchange, you get testimonials and data on the results you generate. Use that to land paying clients." Eliza set down her fork. "I can't afford to work for free for 2 months." "You can if you're still working your other jobs. The pro bono work would be in addition to what you're already doing, not instead of it." "That's, a lot of hours." "Building something always is." She didn't respond immediately. Lucas could see her running the calculations, weighing the cost against the potential benefit. "Why are you helping me?" she asked finally. "You don't know me. This morning you didn't even know I existed." Lucas considered the question. Why was he doing this? It wasn't like him to get involved in strangers' problems. He had his own company to run, his own challenges to manage. "You reminded me of something," he said slowly. "When I was building my company, I had advantages I didn't fully appreciate at the time. Money, connections, education. I thought I'd done it all myself, but the truth is, I had support most people don't get." He paused, looking at the young woman across from him who was working 3 jobs just to afford a $600 training program. "You're doing this the hard way," he continued, "and you're still showing up, Still planning, still believing you can make it work. That's rare. I've met a lot of people who talk about building something, but very few who actually grind through the reality of it. Eliza's expression softened slightly. That's actually really nice to hear. Most days I feel like I'm just barely holding it together. Most successful people feel that way more often than they admit. They finished lunch talking about business strategies, marketing approaches, the specific challenges of building a service-based company. Lucas found himself drawn into the conversation in a way he hadn't expected. Eliza was smart, not educated in the formal sense, but intelligent and observant. She asked good questions. She listened carefully to his answers. When the check came, Lucas paid it before she could even reach for her wallet. Outside, walking back to the car, Eliza said, "Thank you for lunch and for the advice. You didn't have to do any of this." "I know," Lucas said. Then, making a decision that definitely wasn't logical, he pulled out one of his business cards and wrote something on the back. "This is my personal email, the one that doesn't go through my assistant. If you need advice, business advice, send me a message. I can't promise I'll always have time to respond immediately, but I'll do my best." Eliza took the card carefully, like it was made of something fragile. "Why would you do that?" "Because someone did it for me once," Lucas said. "When I was 23 and trying to raise capital for an idea everyone else thought was stupid. A mentor who didn't have to help me but did anyway. It made all the difference." He didn't mention that the mentor had been his uncle, family help rather than a stranger's generosity. Some details didn't need sharing. They drove back to her building in comfortable silence. When he pulled up, Eliza got her suitcase from the back seat. "Thank you again," she said, "for everything." "Good luck with this business," Lucas replied. She closed the door and walked toward the building entrance. Lucas watched her go, then pulled away from the curb. As he merged into traffic heading back toward Manhattan, he found himself thinking about the notebook full of goals, about someone who'd saved for 5 months to invest $600 in herself. His phone rang through the car's Bluetooth. His assistant, reminding him about the 4 p.m. meeting. Lucas acknowledged it, then asked her to do something. "Pull together some information for me," he said. "Small business consulting rates, typical service packages, standard contract templates. Send it to my personal email tonight." "Are we expanding into that sector?" his assistant asked, confused. "No, just researching something. And keep it between us for now." He hung up before she could ask more questions. Lucas had no idea why he was doing this. It made no logical sense to spend time and energy on a stranger's business problems. But something about Eliza Moore's determination, her careful plans, her willingness to work herself to exhaustion for a chance at something better. It reminded him of why he'd started his own company in the first place, before success had become automatic, before his life had calcified into efficiency and isolation, before he'd forgotten what it felt like to fight for something with everything you had, not because you knew you'd win, but because you believed it was worth trying. The email arrived 3 days later at 11:47 p.m. on a Sunday night. Lucas was in his home office reviewing quarterly projections that his CFO had sent over earlier that evening. Sophie was asleep. The apartment was quiet except for the ambient hum of the city that never quite disappeared, even 43 floors up. His personal email pinged, the account he'd given to Eliza. He opened it more quickly than he'd expected to. Subject: Question about pricing strategy, if you have time. Mr. Hale. Lucas. I hope this email finds you well. I wanted to thank you again for lunch last week and for the advice. I've been thinking a lot about what you said regarding pro bono work to build a portfolio. I've identified 3 potential businesses to approach. A family-owned bakery that's been in my neighborhood for 20 years, a small bookstore that's struggling to compete with Amazon, and a yoga studio that just opened 6 months ago. All 3 have minimal online presence and could really benefit from professional help. My question is about how to pitch this without making them suspicious. When someone offers free services, people often assume there's a catch or that the quality won't be good. How do I frame this so they take me seriously? I know you're extremely busy, so no pressure to respond. I just thought I'd ask since you offered. Thank you again for your time. Eliza Moore. Lucas read the email twice. The tone was professional, but not stiff, respectful, but not obsequious. She'd clearly thought carefully about how to phrase the question. He glanced at the time. Almost midnight. He should be sleeping, not answering emails from strangers, but he found himself typing a response anyway. Eliza, good choices on the businesses. All three have different needs, which will give you a diverse portfolio. Regarding your question, don't offer it as free. Frame it as a pilot program or case study. Tell them you're building your consulting business and you're looking for 3 established businesses to partner with for a 2-month intensive project. In exchange for their participation and willingness to provide a testimonial afterward, you'll provide services at no cost. This positions you as a professional who's investing in building credibility, not someone who can't charge because they're not good enough. Big difference in perception. Also, prepare a simple 1-page proposal for each business showing specifically what you do for them. Research their current online presence first. Show them you've already thought about their particular needs. People take you seriously when you show you've done your homework. Let me know how it goes. Lucas. He sent it before second-guessing the decision to engage further. The response came 14 minutes later. That's brilliant. I hadn't thought about framing it that way. Thank you so much. I'll start working on the proposals tomorrow. Out of curiosity, and you can absolutely ignore this question if it's too personal, but when you were starting out, how did you handle the fear that you weren't ready? I keep second-guessing myself, wondering if I'm moving too fast or if I should wait until I know more. Lucas sat back in his chair and considered the question. It was more honest than he'd expected. Most people, especially in business settings, didn't admit to fear. They pretended confidence even when it was a facade. He started typing again. I'll tell you a secret, everyone feels that way. The difference between people who succeed and people who don't isn't the absence of fear. It's the willingness to act anyway. When I started my company, I was terrified I'd fail and prove everyone who doubted me right. I was 23, fresh out of college, pitching an idea that most investors thought was naive. I had moments where I was absolutely certain I was in over my head. But I'd done the work. I'd researched the market, built the financial models, anticipated the objections. I wasn't ready in the sense that anyone is ever truly ready for something hard. But I was prepared. There's a difference. You're prepared. You invested in training. You've identified real needs in the market. You're willing to put in the work. That's more than most people do. The fear doesn't go away. You just get better at moving forward despite it. Lucas. This time, the response took longer. Almost 10 minutes. Thank you. I needed to hear that. I'll let you get back to your Sunday evening. Thanks again for taking the time. Lucas closed his laptop and sat in the quiet of his office. Something about the exchange had left him feeling more awake than he'd been all day. He thought about Eliza, probably sitting in her small apartment in Queens, working late on a Sunday night because she was trying to build something better. Scared, but doing it anyway. When was the last time he'd felt that kind of drive, that kind of hunger? His company was successful, wildly successful, but success had brought comfort, and comfort had brought a certain numbness. Everything felt predictable now, manageable, safe. Lucas stood and walked to the window overlooking the city. Somewhere out there, in a 4th-floor walk-up in Astoria, someone was grinding through fear and uncertainty to chase a dream that might fail. And for reasons he didn't entirely understand, he found himself invested in whether she'd succeed. Over the next 2 weeks, the emails became a pattern. Eliza would send questions, always carefully worded, always respectful of his time. How to structure a service package. How to handle clients who wanted results faster than realistic. How to price her time when she had no idea what her time was worth. Lucas would respond, usually late at night after Sophie was asleep. His answers grew longer, more detailed. He found himself enjoying the exchange in a way he hadn't anticipated. She was a quick learner. He'd suggest something in one email, and by the next one, she'd already implemented it and was asking about the next level of complexity. On a Wednesday evening, 2.5 weeks after the suitcase incident, Lucas was having dinner with Sophie when his daughter asked a question that caught him off guard. "Daddy, why do you smile at your phone now?" Lucas looked up from his pasta. "What do you mean?" Sophie, who had inherited her mother's perceptiveness, along with her dark hair and green eyes, gave him a knowing look that was far too mature for 7 years old. "You used to get mad when your phone buzzed during dinner. Now you smile, like it's a good thing." Lucas realized she was right. He'd been checking his phone more frequently, waiting for the small ping that meant Eliza had sent another email. Just some work stuff that's going well, he said, which wasn't entirely a lie. Is it a new friend? Sophie pressed. Sort of. Someone I'm helping with their business. Like a charity? No, just helping someone who's working hard to build something. Sophie considered this while twirling spaghetti on her fork. That's nice. You should help people more. The simple observation stung a little. When had he stopped being the kind of person who helped people? When had his world narrowed to just his company, his daughter, and the carefully controlled space between them? That night, after Sophie was in bed, Lucas sent an email that was different from the others. Eliza, you mentioned you were meeting with the bakery owner tomorrow. How did you decide to approach them first rather than the bookstore or yoga studio? Also, unrelated question, when's the last time you took a day off? Lucas. The response came an hour later. The bakery felt like the safest bet. Family-owned, been around for decades, they have a loyal customer base already, so I'm not starting from scratch. If I can show them how to expand their reach online, it'll be a stronger testimonial than trying to save a struggling bookstore. As for your second question, define day off. If you mean a day where I don't work any of my jobs, probably 4 months ago? 5? I took a Sunday once when I had the flu and physically couldn't get out of bed. Does that count? E. Lucas frowned at the screen. 4 months. She'd been working 7 days a week for 4 months straight, probably longer. That's not sustainable. I know. But neither is getting evicted or not eating. So here we are. Fair point, but burnout is real, and it'll hurt your business before it helps. Take half a day this weekend. Not for rest necessarily, but for perspective. Go somewhere you've never been in the city. Walk around. Let your brain process something other than work. Is that an order from my unofficial mentor? Lucas smiled at the screen. Call it strong advice. Fine, but only if you do the same. I take time off. I take time. When's the last time you did something just because you wanted to, not because it was productive or necessary? The question sat on his screen, unanswered, because Lucas couldn't actually remember. The bakery meeting happened on a Thursday afternoon. Eliza had switched shifts with James so she could meet with the owner, Mrs. Chen. No relation to his own Mrs. Chen, though the coincidence had made Lucas smile when Eliza mentioned it. She'd sent him her one-page proposal the night before, asking for feedback. Lucas had read it carefully, impressed by how much she'd learned in such a short time. The proposal was professional, specific, and focused on outcomes rather than just activities. She'd researched the bakery's current online presence, which was minimal, and identified 3 concrete ways she could help them reach new customers. He'd sent back a few small suggestions, mostly around language that would resonate better with a small business owner who'd probably never thought much about digital marketing. Now, at 3 p.m., he was in a board meeting that was dragging on far too long. The CFO was presenting third-quarter numbers that Lucas had already reviewed twice. His attention kept drifting to his phone, sitting face down on the conference table, waiting to see if Eliza would email about how the meeting went. Lucas, your thoughts on the European expansion timeline? He refocused immediately, engaging with the question in a way that demonstrated he'd been paying attention even while part of his mind was elsewhere. The meeting continued for another 40 minutes before finally concluding. Back in his office, Lucas checked his email. Nothing yet. He told himself he was being ridiculous. She was probably still in the meeting or processing how it went or dealing with one of her other jobs. At 5:23 p.m., the email arrived. Lucas. She said yes. Mrs. Chen said yes. She wants to do the pilot program. She said she's been wanting to do more with social media but had no idea where to start, and this feels like fate. I'm trying not to freak out, but I'm totally freaking out. This is real. Someone is actually trusting me to help their business. Okay, I need to calm down and be professional about this. But also, thank you for all your help. I know I keep saying that, but I mean it. This wouldn't have happened without your advice. Lucas found himself grinning at his computer screen like an idiot. He typed back, "Congratulations. You earned this. Now comes the hard part, delivering results. But you're ready for that. When do you start?" Monday. She wants to meet weekly to review progress. I'm going to spend this weekend putting together a detailed strategy for the first month. There goes your half day off. Worth it. Lucas leaned back in his chair, still smiling. Pride wasn't an emotion he expected to feel about a stranger's success, but there it was anyway. His assistant knocked on the doorframe. "Your 6 p.m. is here." Right. The investor meeting he'd scheduled weeks ago. "Send them in," Lucas said, closing his email and shifting his focus back to his own business. But throughout the meeting, part of his attention remained on the fact that somewhere in Queens, a young woman was probably planning her first real client project with an excitement he envied. The weekend arrived with unseasonably warm weather for late October. Sophie had a birthday party to attend on Saturday afternoon, which meant Lucas had a few rare hours to himself. He remembered Eliza's challenge. When was the last time he'd done something just because he wanted to? On impulse, he decided to take her advice. He dropped Sophie at her friend's house in Brooklyn. Then instead of returning to Manhattan, he drove aimlessly. No destination, no purpose. Just driving through neighborhoods he rarely visited, watching the city shift and change from block to block. He ended up in Astoria. He told himself it was coincidence, that he'd simply followed the route without thinking about it. But when he found himself parking near the Brazilian restaurant where he and Eliza had lunch, he admitted the truth. He was curious about her neighborhood, about the environment she was navigating while trying to build something. Lucas got out and walked. The streets were busy with weekend activity, families pushing strollers, couples carrying groceries from the market. Small businesses open and serving their communities. A halal cart on the corner, a laundromat with Spanish signage, a bodega with produce displayed outside. This was the world Eliza inhabited. Not polished, not wealthy, but alive in a way his neighborhood in Tribeca never quite managed. He walked past her building, he remembered the address from dropping her off, and wondered if she was up there now, working on her strategy for the bakery. His phone buzzed. Sophie's party was ending in 30 minutes. He needed to head back. As he returned to his car, Lucas realized he felt different, lighter, somehow. Like he'd stepped outside of his carefully controlled life long enough to remember there were other ways to exist. That evening, he sent Eliza an email. "I took your advice. Spent the afternoon walking around with no agenda. You were right about perspective. How's the strategy coming?" The response came quickly. "Look at you, taking actual time off. I'm proud. Strategy is good. Overwhelming, but good. I keep second-guessing every decision, but I'm pushing through it. Also, random confession. I'm terrified I'm going to fail and Mrs. Chen is going to regret trusting me. That's normal. The fear means you care about doing it right. Does it ever go away? The fear?" Lucas thought about his own experience. Board meetings where millions of dollars hung on his decisions. Negotiations where one wrong word could tank a deal. The constant pressure of being responsible for hundreds of employees' livelihoods. No. But you learn to work with it instead of against it. The fear keeps you sharp. Keeps you from getting careless. That's either reassuring or terrifying. I haven't decided which. Both, probably. They continued emailing back and forth for the next hour, the conversation drifting from business to more personal territory. She asked about Sophie. He'd mentioned his daughter in passing during one of their earlier exchanges. He asked about her life before New York. The answers came more slowly, more carefully. "Sophie sounds amazing. Does she look like you?" "She looks like her mother, which I'm grateful for." There was a pause of several minutes before Eliza responded. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to bring up something painful." "It's okay. It was a long time ago. Sophie was 2 when her mother passed. Cancer. She doesn't remember her, which is both a blessing and a tragedy. I can't imagine how hard that must have been. Raising a daughter alone while building a company. You do what you have to do, same as you're doing now. I guess we both know something about fighting through hard things." "Yeah, I guess we do." The conversation shifted after that, returning to safer topics. But something had changed. The exchange felt less like mentor and mentee, less like a business relationship. It felt like friendship. The following week, Eliza started her work with the bakery. She sent Lucas updates almost daily, not asking for advice necessarily, just sharing her progress. She'd photographed the bakery's products and posted them to a new Instagram account. She'd updated their Google business listing with current hours and information. She'd started researching local food bloggers to potentially partner with. Lucas found himself looking forward to her emails more than most of his actual business correspondence. On Wednesday evening, she sent a message that was different from the others. Okay, I need to tell you something, and I'm not sure how you'll react. I was at the coffee shop this morning and overheard two women talking about needing help planning a corporate event. Without thinking, I gave them my card, the new business cards I just got printed, and told them I did event coordination and social media promotion. The problem is, I've never planned an event in my life. I've worked catering gigs, but that's completely different from actually coordinating something. They emailed me this afternoon asking for a proposal. The event is in 6 weeks. Budget is $15,000. Did I just massively screw up by overextending myself? Should I tell them I'm not qualified? Lucas read the email twice, then picked up his phone and did something he hadn't done before. He called her. Eliza answered on the third ring, sounding surprised. Hello? Don't tell them you're not qualified, Lucas said without preamble. A pause. Then, Lucas? Yes. Sorry, I should have identified myself, but I read your email and I didn't want to wait for an exchange of messages. Don't tell them you're not qualified. But I'm not. I have no idea how to plan a corporate event. You have 6 weeks to learn. That's more time than you think. Lucas, this is $15,000. If I mess this up, I could damage my reputation before I even have a reputation. He could hear the panic in her voice, could picture her pacing in her small apartment while talking. Can I ask you something? He said. Okay. When you overheard those women, what made you speak up? Eliza was quiet for a moment. I don't know. Instinct? I heard them talking about their problem, and I just knew I could solve it, or at least I believed I could figure out how to solve it. That instinct is worth more than experience. Experience can be learned. That kind of confidence, the kind that makes you believe you can figure things out, that's rare. I'm not feeling very confident right now. But you spoke up anyway. That matters. He heard her take a breath. So you think I should do it? I think you should send them a proposal that's honest about your approach. Tell them you're a new consultant who specializes in creating high-impact experiences for businesses looking to stand out. Don't lie about your experience, but don't apologize for it either. Focus on what you'll deliver, not what you haven't done before. And if they ask specific questions I can't answer, then you say, that's a great question. Let me research the best options and get back to you tomorrow. Never fake knowledge you don't have, but never act like not knowing something immediately disqualifies you. Eliza was quiet again. Lucas waited, letting her process. Okay, she said finally. Okay, I'll write the proposal tonight. Send it to me before you send it to them. I'll give you feedback. Lucas, I can't keep asking you to. You're not asking, I'm offering. Send it to me. Why are you doing this? The question came out soft, genuine. You've spent hours helping me. You don't owe me anything. Lucas looked around his empty office. Outside the windows, the city glittered with thousands of lights, each one representing someone trying to make something of their life. Maybe I'm doing it for me as much as for you, he said honestly. Maybe watching someone fight this hard reminds me of something I'd forgotten. What's that? That building something matters more when you're not certain you'll succeed. Eliza didn't respond immediately. When she did, her voice was quieter. Thank you for believing in me when I'm not sure I believe in myself. You believe in yourself, Lucas said. You're just scared. There's a difference. They talked for another 20 minutes, Lucas walking her through the basic structure of an event proposal. By the time they hung up, he could hear the shift in her voice from panic to determination. After the call ended, Lucas sat in his office and realized he'd just spent 40 minutes on the phone with someone who wasn't a client, wasn't family, wasn't anyone who technically mattered to his carefully structured life. And it had been the best 40 minutes of his week. Well, the proposal Eliza sent that night was rough, but showed promise. Lucas spent an hour refining it, not rewriting it, but suggesting changes that would make her sound more confident without being dishonest. She sent it to the potential clients the next morning. They responded within 3 hours asking for a meeting. They want to meet Monday at their office, downtown Manhattan. I'm trying not to throw up. You'll be fine. Prepare for 3 questions. What's your process? What's your timeline? What's your pricing structure? Have good answers for those and you'll get the contract. What if they ask about past events I've coordinated? Then you pivot. I'm building my event coordination portfolio, which is why I'm able to offer rates below typical market value while delivering the same quality of service. I've worked in the hospitality industry for years, which is true, catering gigs count, and I've managed social media campaigns for local businesses. This project combines both skill sets in a way that will create a memorable experience for your attendees. You make it sound so easy. It's not easy, but it's doable. You can do hard things, Eliza. You've already proven that. The meeting happened on Monday. Lucas found himself checking his phone throughout the day, waiting for an update. It came at 4:37 p.m. I got it. They signed the contract. $15,000 for 6 weeks of work. I literally cannot believe this is happening. Lucas was in the middle of a conference call. He muted himself and typed quickly. Congratulations. You earned this. I have no idea what I'm doing. Yes, you do. And if you get stuck, ask for help. That's not weakness. That's intelligence. Can I ask you for help? Yes. Thank you. For everything. I mean it. Lucas unmuted himself and rejoined the conference call, but his attention was split. Part of him was calculating projected revenue for Q4. The other part was thinking about a young woman in Queens who just landed her first major client through nothing but courage and determination. That evening, Sophie noticed his distraction during dinner again. You're doing the phone smile thing, she said. Lucas set his phone face down on the table. Sorry, sweetheart. Work stuff. Is it the friend you're helping? Yes? Are they doing good? They're doing really well, actually. Sophie smiled, pleased. That's nice. You seem happier when you help people. The observation hit harder than it should have. Out of the mouths of 7-year-olds came uncomfortable truths. When had he stopped being happy? Not content, not successful, those things he'd achieved, but genuinely happy in a way that showed on his face? After Sophie was in bed, Lucas poured himself a bourbon and stood at the window overlooking the city. Somewhere out there, Eliza was probably planning her event, terrified and excited in equal measure. He picked up his phone and typed, How are you feeling? The response came quickly. Terrified. Excited. Like I might throw up. Also like I could fly. Sounds about right. When you landed your first major contract, did you feel this way? Lucas thought back to being 23, signing the deal that had launched his company into viability. Yes, exactly that way. Did you celebrate? I should have. I probably just went back to work. That's sad. It is, actually. You should celebrate more. So should you. Did you do anything to mark this? I bought fancy coffee at the shop instead of making it at home. I know. I'm wild. Lucas smiled at the screen. That's not a celebration. That's a Tuesday. What would you suggest? Take yourself to dinner. Somewhere nice. Not expensive, necessarily, but nice. Sit down, order something you want instead of something you can afford, and acknowledge what you just accomplished. I can't afford to... Eliza, you just signed a $15,000 contract. You can afford one nice dinner. There was a long pause before she responded. Okay, but only if you do the same. I eat at nice restaurants all the time. But do you celebrate, or do you just eat while working? Lucas looked at the takeout containers from the Thai place down the street, the ones he'd picked up on the way home from the office because cooking felt like too much effort. Point taken. So we both take ourselves to dinner this week. Deal? Deal. And Lucas? Thank you. Not just for the advice, for caring about whether I celebrate. He stared at the message for a long moment before responding. You've worked hard for this. It should be acknowledged. So have you. When's the last time someone told you that you worked hard and it mattered? The question sat on his screen, unanswered, because Lucas couldn't remember that either. Later that night, lying in bed unable to sleep, Lucas admitted something to himself that he'd been avoiding for weeks. He wasn't just mentoring Eliza because it reminded him of his younger self. He wasn't just helping her because he believed in her potential. He was doing it because somewhere in the exchange of emails and advice and encouragement, she'd become important to him. Not as a project, not as a charitable cause, as a person he genuinely cared about. And that realization was both thrilling and terrifying in ways he wasn't prepared to examine too closely. The celebration dinner happened on a Thursday evening, exactly 1 week after Eliza signed the contract. She'd chosen a small Italian restaurant in the West Village, the kind of place that had been written up in food blogs but wasn't so expensive that she'd feel guilty the entire meal. She sat at a table by the window, wearing the one dress she owned that could pass for nice. Navy blue, simple, bought on clearance 3 years ago, but still presentable. The waiter brought her a menu and she ordered without calculating the cost first. Butternut squash ravioli, a glass of red wine, an appetizer she'd wanted to try just because it sounded good. It felt reckless and wonderful in equal measure. Halfway through her meal, her phone buzzed with a message from Lucas. "Where did you end up going?" She smiled and typed back with one hand while holding her wine glass with the other. "Little place in West Village. Actually sitting down and eating like a normal person instead of inhaling food standing over the sink. Proud of you. How's the food?" "Honestly, best meal I've had in months, maybe years." "Good. You deserve it." Eliza looked at the message for a long moment, then typed something she wouldn't have had the courage to send a month ago. "Where are you? Please tell me you're actually at dinner and not working." The response took a few minutes. "I'm at a steakhouse in Midtown. Sophie wanted to come along, so we're making it a father-daughter celebration." "That's perfect. Tell her I said hi." She says hi back. Also, she wants to know if you're the friend I've been helping. Eliza felt something warm spread through her chest that had nothing to do with the wine. "What did you tell her?" "That, yes, you're a friend who's working very hard on building a business." "Friend? I like that." "Me too." They didn't exchange messages again that evening, but Eliza finished her meal with a lightness she hadn't felt in years. She ordered dessert, tiramisu that was probably overpriced but tasted like heaven, and sat in the warm glow of the restaurant watching people pass by on the street outside. For the first time since moving to New York 8 years ago, she felt like maybe she belonged here. Not as someone struggling to survive, but as someone building something real. When the check came, she paid it without flinching. Then she left a generous tip because she remembered what it was like working for tips, remembered how much those extra dollars mattered. Walking to the subway, Eliza pulled out her phone and sent one more message. "Thank you for pushing me to celebrate. I needed this." The response came as she was descending the stairs to the train platform. "You're welcome. Now get some sleep. You have an event to plan." She smiled at her phone like an idiot, earning a strange look from the man standing next to her on the platform. She didn't care. 3 weeks ago, she'd been nobody. A woman working multiple jobs just to stay afloat, with dreams she was afraid to voice out loud. Now she had a client, a real business forming, and somehow, impossibly, she had Lucas Hale in her corner. The train arrived and she got on, already mentally planning her next steps for the corporate event. But underneath the planning and the logistics, there was something else growing. Something she wasn't quite ready to name yet. Something that felt dangerously like hope. The following Monday brought the first real crisis. Eliza had spent the weekend researching event venues, creating mood boards, reaching out to potential vendors. She'd built a detailed timeline and budget breakdown. Everything was progressing smoothly. Then the client called with a change. "We've decided to double the guest list," the woman said cheerfully, like this was a minor adjustment instead of a complete overhaul. "Can you handle 200 people instead of 100? Eliza's mind raced. The venue she'd tentatively booked could only hold 120 at maximum capacity. The catering quotes she'd gotten were all based on 100 guests. Her entire budget structure would need to be recalculated. "Of course," she heard herself say, her voice steady even as panic clawed at her throat. "Let me revise the proposal to reflect the new numbers and I'll have it to you by end of day tomorrow." She hung up and immediately wanted to throw up. Her first instinct was to call Lucas. But it was 10 a.m. on a Monday, and he was probably in meetings, dealing with actual important business decisions, not hand-holding a panicking consultant who just had her first client curveball. Instead, she opened her laptop and started working through the problem systematically. New venue options, revised catering quotes, updated budget allocations. By noon, she'd made progress but hit a wall on the venue. Everything that could hold 200 people was either booked for that date or wildly over budget. She broke down and sent Lucas an email. Client just doubled the guest list. Venue. I had lined up won't work. Everything else is either booked or too expensive. Starting to panic. Any advice? The response came 20 minutes later. Call me. Her phone rang before she could even process the message. Hi, she answered, trying to sound calmer than she felt. Talk me through the venue problem. Lucas said without preamble. She explained the situation, the date, the guest count, the budget constraints, the locations she'd already ruled out. Lucas was quiet for a moment. She could hear him thinking, could picture him in his office processing the information with that focused intensity he brought to everything. "What neighborhood does the client company operate in?" he asked. "Financial district. Why?" "Because you're thinking about this wrong. You don't need a traditional event venue. You need a space that can be transformed into an event venue." Eliza grabbed a pen. "I'm listening." "Art galleries, loft spaces, even office buildings with large common areas. Unconventional spaces often cost less than traditional venues because they're not marketed specifically for events. Plus, using a unique space makes the event more memorable, which is better for your portfolio." She was already searching online as he talked. "That's brilliant. Why didn't I think of that?" "Because you're new at this and you defaulted to the obvious solution. That's normal. But one of the advantages of being new is that you can be creative in ways established event planners can't because they're locked into their usual vendor relationships." Eliza found herself smiling despite the stress. "You're good at this pep talk thing?" "I've had practice. Sophie goes through regular crises about everything from math homework to whether her friends still like her. Talking people down from panic is part of the job description." The casual mention of his daughter made something in Eliza's chest tighten. She loved hearing these small glimpses into his life beyond the CEO persona. "Well, it's working. I feel approximately 20% less like I'm drowning. Let's get you to 50%. What else is causing problems?" They spent the next 30 minutes on the phone, Lucas walking her through strategies for vendor negotiation, suggesting questions to ask caterers to get better rates, helping her restructure the budget to accommodate the increased guest count without blowing past the client's spending limit. By the time they hung up, Eliza had a clear action plan, and her panic had downgraded to manageable anxiety. "Lucas?" she said before he could disconnect. "Yeah? Thank you for dropping whatever you were doing to help me. I was in a meeting about third-quarter projections. Trust me, this was more interesting." She laughed. "I'm sure your CFO would love to hear that." "Probably not, but it's true anyway." After the call ended, Eliza dove back into work with renewed energy. By 8 p.m. that night, she'd found a converted warehouse space in Brooklyn that was available, affordable, and perfect. She'd gotten revised catering quotes. She'd updated her entire proposal. She sent it to the client at 9:47 p.m., well before her end-of-day Tuesday deadline. The response came the next morning before she'd even finished her opening shift at the coffee shop. "This is even better than the original proposal. Love the venue choice. Let's move forward." Eliza read the message 3 times to make sure it was real. Then she stepped into the back room, ostensibly to restock cups, and did a small, silent victory dance where no one could see her. James found her grinning at the supply shelves. "Did you win the lottery or something?" "Better," Eliza said. "I just saved my first major project from disaster." "The consulting thing?" "Yeah." "That's awesome. When do you think you'll be able to quit this place?" The question made Eliza pause. She hadn't thought that far ahead. The idea of leaving the coffee shop felt both thrilling and terrifying. It was steady income. It was safe. But safe wasn't going to build the life she wanted. "I don't know," she said honestly. "But maybe sooner than I thought." The relationship between Lucas and Eliza shifted after that phone call. The emails continued, but now they talked on the phone too. Quick calls during his drive home from the office. Longer conversations late at night after Sophie was asleep and Eliza had finished whatever freelance work she'd picked up that evening. They talked about business, mostly, her event planning, his upcoming merger, the challenges of scaling a business, the loneliness of being responsible for other people's livelihoods. But they also talked about other things. Sophie's school play, Eliza's complicated relationship with her family back in Pennsylvania, the books they were reading, the last time either of them had taken a real vacation. Lucas found himself looking forward to these conversations more than he wanted to admit. There was something about talking to Eliza that felt different from every other interaction in his life. She didn't want anything from him except advice, and even that she accepted gratefully without ever making him feel obligated. She challenged him, too, in ways most people didn't dare. During one late-night call, she asked, "Do you ever think about doing something completely different? Like, if you weren't running your company, what would you do?" Lucas was in his home office, nursing a bourbon and looking out at the city lights. The question caught him off guard. I don't know. I've been doing this for so long, I'm not sure I know how to do anything else. That's not true. You're good at mentoring. You could teach, maybe. Business school or something. Standing in front of a classroom? I don't think so. Why not? You're patient. You explain things clearly. You don't make people feel stupid for not knowing something. Lucas considered this. I've never thought about it. Maybe you should. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm sure your company is important, but you seem happiest when you're helping people figure things out. The observation was too accurate to be comfortable. Sophie said something similar recently, Lucas admitted, that I seem happier when I'm helping people. Smart kid. Too smart sometimes. Eliza laughed, and the sound made him smile reflexively. Can I ask you something? She said, her tone shifting to something more serious. Of course. Well, why did you really start helping me? And don't say it's because I reminded you of yourself or because someone helped you once. I mean the real reason. Lucas set down his glass and thought about how to answer honestly. I think, he said slowly, I was lonely. Not in the obvious way. I have Sophie, I have colleagues, I have a full life on paper. But I was lonely for connection that felt real. Everyone I interact with wants something from me, a decision, an approval, an investment. Even Sophie, as much as I love her, needs me to be dad, to be the stable one, the reliable one. He paused, surprised by his own honesty. You didn't want anything from me, he continued. You just wanted to return a suitcase. And then you wanted advice, but you asked like it was a favor, not an expectation. Talking to you felt like the first real conversation I'd had in years. The silence on the other end stretched for several seconds. That's the saddest thing I've heard in a long time, Eliza said finally, her voice soft. Is it? Yes. Because you're Lucas Hales. You have everything, and you're telling me you're lonely. Having everything doesn't mean you have what matters. No, she agreed quietly. I guess it doesn't. They talked for another hour that night, the conversation drifting into deeper territory than either had intended. Eliza told him about why she'd left Pennsylvania, a father who drank, a mother who'd given up, siblings she'd had to parent because no one else would, how she'd saved every dollar from her job at a local grocery store until she had enough for a bus ticket and 1 month's rent in New York. Lucas told her about his wife, how they'd met in college, married too young, had Sophie before they'd really figured out who they were as individuals, how cancer had taken her so quickly there'd been no time to prepare, no chance to say everything that needed saying. I was angry for a long time, he admitted. Not at her, at the universe maybe, at the unfairness of it. Sophie was too. She needed her mother. I needed my wife. And none of that mattered to cancer. How did you get through it? I'm not sure I did. I just kept moving, built the business bigger, focused on Sophie, filled every hour so I wouldn't have to feel anything. That's not getting through it. That's surviving. What's the difference? Getting through it means you eventually feel things again. Surviving just means you're still breathing. The words hit harder than they should have. Lucas realized she was right. He'd been surviving for 5 years, mistaking forward momentum for healing. You're very wise for someone so young, he said, trying to lighten the mood. I'm 27, not exactly a child. I'm 32, that makes me ancient. Practically geriatric, she teased. Should I be worried about you breaking a hip during our phone calls? He laughed, grateful for the shift in tone. I'll try to stay upright. When they finally hung up, well past midnight, Lucas sat in his office for a long time, thinking about the conversation. Something had shifted. The boundary between mentor and friend had blurred into something else, something neither of them had named yet, but both could feel building. And Lucas wasn't sure if he should pull back or lean into it. The corporate event was 3 weeks away when Lucas made a decision that surprised him. He was having lunch with Sophie at her favorite diner, the kind of place that served breakfast all day and had crayons at every table. She was drawing an elaborate picture of what she claimed was a unicorn, but looked more like a horse with a traffic cone attached to its head. Daddy, can I ask you something? She said without looking up from her artwork. Always, sweetheart. Are you dating someone? Lucas nearly choked on his coffee. What? No, why would you ask that? Sophie finally looked up, her green eyes serious. Because you're different lately. You smile more. You're not always thinking about work during dinner, and you talk on the phone at night in that quiet voice you used to use with mommy. The observation was so accurate it was almost painful. I'm not dating anyone, Lucas said carefully, but I've been talking to a friend more often lately. The friend you're helping with business stuff? Yes? Is she pretty? Sophie? It's a yes or no question, Daddy. Lucas sighed. I don't know. I mean, yes, she's pretty, but that's not why we're friends. Do you like talking to her? Yes. Does she make you happy? Lucas considered the question honestly. Did Eliza make him happy? Talking to her felt like the best part of his day. Helping her succeed gave him more satisfaction than closing any business deal. Hearing her laugh made him smile even when he was exhausted. Yeah, he said quietly. She does make me happy. Sophie nodded like this confirmed something she'd already suspected. Then you should meet her in person more, not just on the phone. It's complicated, sweetheart. Why? Because we're very different people from very different worlds. Sophie went back to coloring her unicorn. That's dumb. If she makes you happy, who cares if you're different? Out of the mouths of 7-year-olds. That evening, Lucas sent Eliza a message that felt simultaneously bold and terrifying. The event is in 3 weeks. When was the last time you took an actual break? Define break. More than 3 hours away from all your jobs. Then, never? I don't know. Why? Lucas typed his next message carefully. Sophie has a school thing Friday afternoon that I need to attend. I was thinking of taking the rest of the day off afterward. Maybe walking around the city, getting coffee, being a human instead of a CEO for a few hours. Want to join me? He sent it before he could second-guess the invitation. The response took longer than usual, long enough that Lucas started to regret asking. Finally, her message came through. Are you asking me to hang out? Like in person? Not for business reasons? Yes. Is that weird? Maybe a little. But good weird. So is that a yes? I have the afternoon shift at the coffee shop. Can you switch with someone? Another pause. Probably. James owes me from last week. Then switch with him. Lucas, are you sure about this? I mean, we've built this nice mentor thing. What if meeting in person ruins it? The question was valid. They'd built something in the safe distance of emails and phone calls. Meeting in person added a layer of reality that could expose the connection as less than what it felt like digitally. But Lucas found he wanted to take that risk. Then it ruins it. But I don't think it will. Okay. Friday afternoon. What time? They made plans to meet at 2 p.m. in Washington Square Park. Neutral territory. Public. Low stakes. For the next 3 days, Lucas found himself unusually distracted. He caught himself checking his appearance in mirrors more than normal. He second-guessed his outfit choices for Friday. He felt like a teenager preparing for a first date, which was ridiculous. This wasn't a date. It was just two friends meeting for coffee and a walk. But the nervous energy in his stomach suggested his subconscious didn't entirely believe that rationalization. Friday arrived with perfect autumn weather. Lucas attended Sophie's school presentation. She'd written a story about a unicorn who solved mysteries, reading it aloud with endearing seriousness, then dropped her at Mrs. Chen's for the afternoon. He drove to Washington Square Park and found parking, which felt like a small miracle. As he walked toward the arch, he realized his hands were actually shaking slightly. Ridiculous. He'd negotiated multi-million-dollar deals without breaking a sweat. He shouldn't be nervous about meeting someone for coffee, but he was. He spotted Eliza before she saw him. She was sitting on a bench near the fountain, wearing jeans and a burgundy sweater, her dark hair down around her shoulders instead of pulled back like it had been the first time they met. She was watching the street performers and tourists with an expression that was part amusement, part observation. Lucas approached slowly, suddenly uncertain how to greet her. Handshake felt too formal. Hug felt too presumptuous. She solved the problem by standing when she saw him and smiling that genuine smile he'd only seen once before. Hi, she said. Hi. He found himself smiling back like an idiot. You made it. James owed me. Plus I figured if I flaked on Lucas Hale, that would be pretty rude. Just moderately rude, Lucas said. I would have forgiven you. They started walking without discussing a destination, falling into step naturally.
So, Eliza said after a moment, this is weird, right? We've talked for hours on the phone, but actually standing next to each other feels strange. Good strange or bad strange? She considered this. Jury's still out. They walked through the park and into the surrounding neighborhood, talking about nothing important. The weather, the street performers, a dog that ran past chasing a frisbee with joyful determination. Gradually, the strangeness faded. They found a coffee shop, not a chain, but a small independent place with mismatched furniture and the smell of freshly ground beans. Lucas ordered an Americano, Eliza got a cappuccino with an extra shot. They sat by the window, and the conversation flowed the same way it did on the phone. Easy, natural, like they'd been doing this for years instead of weeks. "Can I tell you something?" Eliza said eventually, her fingers wrapped around her coffee cup. "Of course. I was terrified to meet you today." "Why?" "Because on the phone, I can be confident. I can think about what to say. In person, I'm just me. And you're, you." Lucas leaned back in his chair, studying her. "And who am I?" "Lucas Hale, CEO, Billionaire. Someone who moves through the world like he owns it." "That's what you see?" "That's what everyone sees." "What do you see when you look at me right now?" Eliza met his eyes directly. "Someone who's lonely. Someone who's trying to figure out how to be more than just successful." The observation was so accurate it made his chest tight. "You're right," he said quietly. "That's exactly what I'm trying to figure out." They sat in silence for a moment, the noise of the coffee shop humming around them. "For what it's worth," Eliza said, "I think you're doing pretty well." "Yeah? You're here instead of in an office. You took time off to be present for your daughter's school thing. You're helping a stranger build a business for no reason except you want to. That's not nothing." Lucas felt something shift in his chest. When was the last time someone had acknowledged his efforts without expecting more? "Thank you," he said. "You're welcome." They stayed in the coffee shop for over an hour, the conversation drifting from topic to topic with the ease of old friends. Eventually, they left and walked some more, ending up near the Hudson River as the sun started its descent toward the horizon. Standing at the railing overlooking the water, Lucas realized something that should have terrified him, but instead felt oddly right. He didn't want this afternoon to end. "I should probably get back," Eliza said, but she didn't move. "Yeah, me too." Neither of them moved. "This was nice," she said finally. "We should do it again sometime." "We should." Eliza turned to face him, and Lucas noticed details he'd missed before. The small scar near her left eyebrow, the way her eyes crinkled slightly when she smiled. The fact that she was maybe 5 inches shorter than him, which meant she had to tilt her head slightly to maintain eye contact. "Lucas," she said softly. "Yeah? What are we doing here?" The question hung between them, honest and vulnerable. Lucas could have deflected, could have said they were just friends meeting for coffee, could have maintained the safe distance of mentor and mentee. Instead, he told the truth. "I don't know. But I know I didn't want today to end. And I know talking to you is the best part of most of my days. And I know that probably complicates everything." Eliza nodded slowly. "It does complicate everything. Does that scare you?" "Terrifies me. You?" "Same." They stood there by the river as the sun painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, two people from completely different worlds trying to figure out if the connection they'd built in emails and phone calls could survive in the real world. "I should really go," Eliza said again. "Okay." But neither of them moved for another minute, both somehow knowing that once they walked away from this moment, they'd have to decide what came next. Finally, Eliza took a step back. "Thank you for today. It was really good to see you." "You too." She turned to leave, then stopped. "Lucas? I'm glad we did this." "Me too." He watched her walk away until she disappeared into the crowd, then stood by the river for a long time watching the sun finish its descent. His phone buzzed. A message from Sophie via Mrs. Chen's tablet. "Did you have fun with your friend?" Lucas smiled and typed back. "Yeah, sweetheart, I really did." The silence after their afternoon together felt different than the silences before.
Lucas sat in his car for 20 minutes after Eliza had disappeared into the crowd, trying to understand what had just shifted between them. The emails and phone calls had been safe, bounded by screens and distance, easy to rationalize as mentorship or friendship. But standing beside her at the river, watching the light catch in her hair, hearing her laugh without the distortion of a phone line, that had been something else entirely. He drove home through rush hour traffic, his mind only half on the road. The other half kept replaying moments from the afternoon, the way she'd tucked her hair behind her ear when she was thinking, how she'd argued with him about the best route to take through the village like she'd lived there her whole life. The moment their hands had almost touched reaching for the door at the same time, and how they'd both pulled back too quickly. Mrs. Chen had dinner waiting when he arrived. Sophie was at the kitchen table doing homework, or at least pretending to while actually drawing more unicorns in the margins of her math worksheet. "How was your afternoon?" he asked, kissing the top of her head. "Good. How was yours?" She looked up at him with those two knowing eyes. "Good. Did you have fun with your friend?" "I already answered that in my text. I want to hear you say it in person." Lucas pulled out a chair and sat down across from her. "Yes, I had fun. We walked around, got coffee, talked." "What did you talk about?" "Everything. Nothing. Just conversation." Sophie studied him with an intensity that reminded him uncomfortably of her mother. "You really like her, don't you?" "Sophie, it's okay if you do, Daddy. I want you to be happy." The simple statement made his throat tight. When had his 7-year-old daughter started worrying about whether he was happy? "I am happy, sweetheart." "You're happier now than you were before, I can tell." Mrs. Chen, who'd been tactfully pretending not to listen while setting out dinner plates, caught his eye and gave him a small, knowing smile. After dinner, after Sophie was in bed, Lucas sat in his office and stared at his phone. He wanted to text Eliza, wanted to continue the conversation they'd been having by the river before reality had pulled them back. But what would he even say? His phone buzzed, solving the problem for him. "I'm home. James is never letting me forget that I bailed on a Friday shift to hang out with a billionaire." Lucas smiled at the screen. "Did you tell him the billionaire bought you expensive coffee?" "I told him the billionaire bought me a $4 cappuccino, and we walked around like normal humans. He was disappointed by the lack of helicopter rides and champagne. I can arrange a helicopter ride if that would make the story better." "Please don't. I'm terrified of heights." "Noted. No helicopters." There was a pause, then another message came through. "Today was really nice. I wasn't sure it would be, but it was." "You thought it might not be nice?" "I thought it might be awkward, like when you meet someone you've only known online and realize you have nothing in common in person." "Did we have nothing in common?" "No. We had everything in common, which is somehow more terrifying." Lucas understood exactly what she meant. The connection they'd built remotely had translated seamlessly into reality, which meant they couldn't dismiss it as a digital illusion anymore. "Terrifying how?" The response took several minutes. "Because this feels real now, and real things can hurt in ways hypothetical things can't." Lucas stared at her message for a long time before responding. "They can also matter in ways hypothetical things can't." "Is that what you want? For this to matter?" He could have hedged, could have kept it light and non-committal. Instead, he typed the truth. It already matters. No response came for almost 10 minutes. Lucas watched the screen, wondering if he'd pushed too far, been too honest. Finally, 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. "I don't know what to do with that." "Neither do I. But I thought you should know." "Lucas, I'm 27 years old and I work 3 jobs just to make rent. You're a billionaire CEO with a daughter and a life that exists in a completely different stratosphere than mine. What exactly are we doing here?" The question was fair, rational, exactly what his own logical mind had been asking. "I don't know, but I know that I haven't felt this alive in years. And I think you feel something too, or you wouldn't be scared." "Of course I feel something, but feeling something doesn't mean it makes sense. When has anything worth having ever made sense?" Another long pause. "I need to think about this. About what this is or could be. I can't think clearly when I'm texting you at midnight." "Okay. Think about it. Take your time. Thank you for today. Even if I'm currently spiraling about what it means. You're welcome. And Eliza? Whatever you decide, I'm glad we met, even if it started with a suitcase mix-up. Me too. Good night, Lucas. Good night. He set his phone down and leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling. The smart thing would be to let this go, to pull back before it got complicated. He had Sophie to think about. His company, his carefully structured life that worked precisely because he didn't introduce variables he couldn't control. But nothing about meeting Eliza had been part of any plan, and somehow that made it feel more important than anything he'd carefully orchestrated. And the weekend passed with no contact between them. Lucas had told her to take her time, and he meant it, but the silence felt heavier than it should have. He took Sophie to the park on Saturday, to the Natural History Museum on Sunday. He tried to be present, to focus on his daughter and the moments they were sharing, but his mind kept drifting to a fourth-floor walk-up in Astoria and the woman there who was probably planning her event and avoiding thinking about him. Or maybe she wasn't avoiding thinking about him at all. Maybe she'd already decided it was too complicated and moved on. The thought bothered him more than it should have. Monday morning arrived with a full schedule of meetings. Lucas was in the middle of a conference call with his legal team about the merger when his assistant knocked on his office door. He muted himself and looked up questioningly. "There's a delivery for you," she said, looking confused. "Personal, not business. I wasn't sure if you wanted it brought in or what kind of delivery." "Coffee. From a shop in Astoria." The delivery guy said it was important that it still be hot. Lucas unmuted long enough to say he'd be right back, then stepped out of his office. Sure enough, there was a to-go cup sitting on his assistant's desk, still steaming. A note was attached. "You told me to think about it. I thought better with good coffee. Thank you for letting me have the weekend to process. Can we talk tonight?" Lucas picked up the coffee and allowed himself a small smile. His assistant was watching him with undisguised curiosity. "Personal matter," he said, answering her unasked question. "Clearly," she replied, her tone suggesting she had opinions about personal matters that involved coffee deliveries from Astoria. He returned to his call, but the coffee sat on his desk the entire time, a tangible reminder that Eliza hadn't run away from whatever was happening between them. That evening, he called her as soon as Sophie was settled with her homework. She answered on the second ring. "Hi. Hi, thank you for the coffee. That was—" "I know it was dramatic, but I figured if I'm going to spiral about complicated things, I might as well do it with a grand gesture." Lucas laughed. "It was a good grand gesture. I'm glad you thought so. I was worried it might be too much. It was perfect." A pause. Then Eliza took a breath that Lucas could hear through the phone. "I've been thinking about what you said, about this mattering, and you're right, it does matter. You matter, which is why I need to be honest about something." Lucas sat down, sensing the shift in her tone. "Okay. I'm terrified of this. Of you. Not because you're intimidating. Well, you are, but that's not the main thing. I'm terrified because for the first time in years, I actually care about something beyond just surviving. I care about you, and I have no idea what to do with that." "Join the club," Lucas said softly. "The thing is, I don't do complicated well. I can barely manage my own life. I work 3 jobs. I'm trying to build a business. I have exactly $47 in my checking account right now. I can't be what someone like you needs." "What do you think I need?" "Someone who fits into your world. Someone who knows how to navigate charity galas and business dinners. Someone who wouldn't feel completely out of place in your life." Lucas thought about his life, the endless social obligations he attended out of duty, the conversations that felt hollow, the relationships that existed because they were professionally useful rather than personally meaningful.
"You know what I actually need," he said. "I need someone who's honest. Someone who challenges me. Someone who makes me remember what it feels like to want something. Not because it's logical or strategic, but because it matters." "Lucas, I'm not asking you to fit into my world, Eliza. I'm asking if you want to see if we can build something that doesn't belong entirely to either of our worlds." Silence stretched between them, filled with possibility and fear in equal measure. "I don't know how to do that," she said finally. "Neither do I, but I'm willing to figure it out if you are." "What about Sophie? Have you thought about what introducing someone new into her life would mean?" Lucas had thought about it extensively over the weekend. "Sophie's the one who noticed I was happier. She's the one who told me I should see you more.
I'm not going to introduce anyone into her life casually, but if this is real, if we're going to try to make this real, then yeah, eventually she'd need to be part of that conversation. This is crazy, Eliza said, but her voice had shifted from resistant to wondering. Probably. I have an event to plan. You have a company to run. We barely know each other. We know each other better than I've known anyone in years. We've known each other for 5 weeks, Lucas. And in those 5 weeks, I've told you things I haven't told anyone. You've shared parts of your life you don't usually share. Time isn't always the best measure of connection. He could hear her breathing, could picture her pacing her small apartment while processing everything he was saying. If we do this, she said slowly, we have to be honest about what it is. No pretending. No games. I can't handle games. No games, Lucas agreed. Complete honesty. And we take it slow. I need to focus on this event. I can't afford to get distracted right now. Slow works for me. I have Sophie and work and a merger to finalize. Slow is probably smart. Okay? Okay? Okay, let's try this. Whatever this is. But Lucas, I need you to promise me something. What? If at any point this stops working, if it gets too complicated, or if you realize I don't fit, or if Sophie needs you to be just her dad and not someone who's dating, you tell me. You don't let it drag out to spare my feelings. I promise. But you have to promise the same thing. If this becomes too much, if it's interfering with your business or your goals, you tell me. Deal. They stayed on the phone for another hour, the conversation shifting to easier topics now that they'd navigated the difficult one. Eliza told him about her progress on the event. Lucas told her about Sophie's latest unicorn drawing, which now included a detective hat because the unicorn was apparently solving crimes. When they finally hung up, Lucas sat in his office feeling simultaneously terrified and more hopeful than he'd felt in years. They were doing this, whatever this was. The next 2 weeks fell into a new pattern. Lucas and Eliza talked every day, but the conversations were shorter now. She was deep into event planning, coordinating vendors, managing last-minute client changes, working her other jobs while simultaneously building her business. Lucas was finalizing the merger that would expand his company into 3 new markets. Board meetings, investor calls, negotiations that required every ounce of his attention. But they made time. Quick phone calls during lunch breaks, text messages late at night, small moments of connection that felt more important than the hours they used to spend on the phone. They didn't see each other in person. Both agreed they needed to focus on their responsibilities, but the knowledge that they were trying, that they'd agreed to see where this could go, changed everything. Lucas found himself thinking about the future in ways he hadn't in years. Not just the next quarter's projections or Sophie's next school year, but bigger possibilities. What it might look like to build a life with someone. What it might mean to let someone in. Sophie noticed the change in him immediately. "You're humming," she said one evening while he was making dinner. Lucas paused, realizing she was right. He'd been humming while chopping vegetables. When was the last time he'd done that? "Is that a crime?" "No, it's nice. You used to hum when Mommy was alive. I remember." The observation made his chest tight. He set down the knife and looked at his daughter. "Does it bother you that I'm happy?" Sophie looked at him like he'd asked the stupidest question imaginable. "Why would that bother me?" "Because it means things are changing. I'm changing." She considered this with the seriousness she brought to all important matters. Things are always changing. That's what Mrs. Chen says. She says the only thing that stays the same is that nothing stays the same. Mrs. Chen is very wise. She is, but Daddy, can I ask you something? Always. When am I going to meet your friend? Lucas sat down at the kitchen table, pulling Sophie into the chair next to him. Would you want to meet her? If she makes you happy, then yeah. I want to know what she's like. It might be a while still. We're both really busy right now and we're taking things slow. Lucas returned to chopping vegetables, still humming, without realizing it. The corporate event was 2 days away when everything started going wrong. The caterer called Tuesday morning to say their kitchen had flooded and they couldn't fulfill the order. Eliza had exactly 48 hours to find a replacement caterer for 200 people. She called Lucas in a panic. "I can fix this," she said, her voice tight with barely controlled hysteria. I can fix this. I just need to breathe and think clearly and... Eliza, stop. She stopped talking. Breathe, Lucas said calmly. Right now. Just breathe. He heard her take a shaky breath. Good. Again. Another breath, steadier this time. Now tell me exactly what happened. She explained the situation. Lucas listened, his mind already working through solutions. Okay, here's what you're going to do. Call every catering company you researched initially, the ones you ruled out because of price or availability. Tell them exactly what happened and ask if they can help. Be honest about the timeline and the budget. They're all going to say no. Some will, but you only need one yes, and caterers talk to each other. Even if someone can't help, they might know someone who can. Okay, I can do that. And if that doesn't work in the next 6 hours, call me back. I have connections in the restaurant industry. We'll figure something out. Lucas, I can't ask you to... You're not asking, I'm offering. This is your first major event. We're not letting it fail because of a flooded kitchen. He could hear the emotion in her voice when she responded. Thank you. Call me in 6 hours either way. Let me know what happens. 5 hours later, she called back. I found someone. A catering company in Red Hook. They had a cancellation for that weekend, and they can do it. It's going to be tight on the budget, but I can make it work. The relief in her voice was palpable. See, I told you could handle it. I almost had a heart attack, but yeah, I handled it. Welcome to event planning. Crisis management is half the job. I hate it. No, you don't. You love it. You love the challenge of making something work when everyone else would give up. She laughed, and Lucas realized how much he'd missed that sound over the past 2 weeks of shorter conversations. When is this event again? He asked. Thursday evening. Why? Just wondering, what time does it start? 7 p.m. But I'll be there from noon on setting everything up. And you're sure you have everything under control? As under control as a first-time event planner can have things 2 days before an event. Why are you asking? No reason, just want to make sure you're ready. They talked for a few more minutes before Eliza had to go. Another vendor to confirm, another detail to verify. But before hanging up, she said something that made Lucas's chest warm. I miss you. I know we talk every day, but I miss actually seeing you. I miss you too. After this event, can we do the coffee and walking around thing again? Absolutely. Okay, good, because I need something to look forward to besides the terror of pulling off this event. You're going to do great. From your mouth to the universe's ears. After they hung up, Lucas sat in his office thinking. An idea had formed during the conversation. Probably not a smart idea, possibly overstepping, but he couldn't shake it. He called his assistant. I need you to clear my schedule for Thursday evening. Sir, you have the investor dinner on Thursday evening, the one that's been scheduled for 2 months. Reschedule it. Tell them something came up. His assistant was silent for a moment, clearly trying to process this unprecedented request. Lucas never rescheduled investor dinners. May I ask why? Personal matter. Does this personal matter have anything to do with the coffee delivery from Astoria? Lucas smiled despite himself. Possibly. I'll reschedule the dinner. Thursday arrived with crisp November weather, the kind of evening that made New York feel magical despite its chaos. Lucas dropped Sophie at a friend's house for a sleepover, drove to Brooklyn, and parked near the converted warehouse where Eliza's event was being held. It was 6:30 p.m. The event started in 30 minutes. He stood across the street, watching people in business attire arrive. Caterers moved in and out carrying trays. String lights twinkled in the windows. Everything looked professional. Polished, perfect. Lucas wondered if Eliza would be angry that he'd come without telling her. Wondered if showing up unannounced crossed a line they'd established about taking things slow. But he'd wanted to see her in her element, wanted to witness the moment she'd been working toward for weeks. At 6:55, the doors closed and the event officially began. Lucas crossed the street and approached the entrance. A young woman with a clipboard stood by the door. Good evening. Name, please? Lucas Hale. I'm not on the list, but I'm a friend of the event coordinator. The woman checked her clipboard, then looked up at him with recognition. You're Lucas Hale? Like Hale Enterprises Lucas Hale? Yes. Please, come in. I'll let Ms. Moore know you're here. The warehouse had been transformed into an elegant event space. round tables with white linens, centerpieces of autumn flowers, a small stage with professional lighting, servers circulated with appetizers and drinks, soft jazz played from speakers positioned throughout the space. Lucas accepted a glass of wine from a passing server and took in the scene. It was impressive. Really impressive. Eliza had done this with no prior experience, working 3 jobs, managing a tiny budget. She appeared from a doorway near the back, wearing black pants and a silk blouse, her hair pulled back professionally. She was talking to someone on a headset, clearly coordinating something backstage. Then she saw him. Her expression cycled through surprise, confusion, and something that looked like joy before settling into a slightly exasperated smile. She finished her conversation, pulled off the headset, and walked over to him. "What are you doing here?" she asked, but there was no anger in her voice, just wonder. "I wanted to see you succeed." "Lucas, you can't just show up at my event. What if my clients see you? What if they realize I know Lucas Hale and think that's the only reason I got this contract? Then I'll stay in the back and be invisible, but I wanted to be here, to support you." Eliza looked at him for a long moment, then shook her head with a smile. "You're impossible. I've been told that before. Stay here. Don't talk to anyone. And definitely don't tell anyone who you are." "I'll be a ghost." "You sure you're 6'2" and wearing a suit that probably costs more than my car? You're not going to blend in." Lucas looked around at the other attendees. She had a point. "I'll stay out of the way," he compromised. Eliza squeezed his hand quickly, a gesture so brief he almost missed it, then disappeared back into coordinator mode, moving through the space checking details, talking to servers, ensuring everything ran smoothly. Lucas found a spot near the back wall where he could watch without being obtrusive. Over the next 2 hours, he witnessed Eliza in action. She handled a minor crisis with the AV system without anyone noticing. She gracefully redirected a guest who'd had too much wine. She coordinated the dinner service with the precision of someone who'd been doing this for years. She was magnificent. Around 9 p.m. during dessert service, she appeared beside him again. "You're still here," she said. "I told you I would be. The event's almost over. I need to stay until the end, make sure cleanup starts properly." "I can wait." "Lucas, you really don't have to." "I know I don't have to. I want to." She looked at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "This is the nicest thing anyone's done for me in a long time." "Showing up uninvited to your event? Showing up because you believed I could do this, because you wanted to see me succeed." The last guest left around 10:30. Eliza coordinated with the catering company and the venue staff about cleanup, ensured everything was being handled properly, then finally stepped outside where Lucas was waiting. She looked exhausted and exhilarated in equal measure. "You did it," Lucas said. "I did it." She started laughing, the kind of relieved laughter that comes after sustained tension finally releases. "I actually did it. The clients loved everything. They're already talking about booking me for their next event." "Of course they are. You were incredible in there." Eliza spun in a small circle on the sidewalk, her arms out, face tilted toward the sky. "I did it!" Lucas watched her celebrate, memorizing the moment. This was what success looked like when you'd fought for every inch of it. She stopped spinning and looked at him, suddenly serious. "Thank you for being here. I know we said we were taking things slow, but having you here meant everything. I wouldn't have missed it." They stood on the Brooklyn sidewalk in the November cold, the noise of the city humming around them. "Can I drive you home?" Lucas asked. "My car's parked 2 blocks away." "Then can I walk you to your car?" "You can do better than that." "What do you mean?" Eliza stepped closer to him. "You can kiss me." Lucas's heart rate kicked up. "I thought we were taking things slow." "We were. We have been. But I just pulled off my first major event, and you showed up to support me, and I'm standing here thinking that slow is overrated." Eliza, "Oh, if you don't want to, that's okay. But if you do want to and you're holding back because you think you should, then stop overthinking it." Lucas looked at her, really looked at her. The woman who'd saved for 5 months to invest in herself, who worked 3 jobs without complaining, who'd taken a chance on her own abilities and proved herself right. He stepped forward, cupped her face in his hands, and kissed her. It was soft at first, tentative, like they were both still confirming this was real. Then Eliza's hands found his jacket and pulled him closer, and the kiss deepened into something that felt inevitable. When they finally pulled apart, they were both breathing hard. "Slow is definitely overrated," Eliza said. Lucas laughed, resting his forehead against hers. "Completely overrated." They stood there for another moment, holding each other on a Brooklyn sidewalk, two people from different worlds who'd found something neither had been looking for. "I should really get home," Eliza said eventually, but she didn't move. "You should." "Are you going to let me go?" "Eventually." She smiled against his shoulder. "Lucas?" "Yeah?" "I'm really glad we mixed up our suitcases. Best mistake I ever made." They finally pulled apart on that Brooklyn sidewalk, and Lucas walked Eliza to her car with his hand in hers. The simple gesture felt monumental. Weeks of careful distance collapsed into the warmth of her fingers laced through his. "So what happens now?" Eliza asked when they reached her aging Honda Civic, parked under a streetlight that flickered intermittently. Lucas leaned against her car, pulling her closer. "What do you want to happen?" "I want to see you tomorrow. And the day after that. I want to stop pretending this is casual when it hasn't been casual since the first phone call." "Then that's what we do." "Just like that?" "Just like that." He kissed her forehead. "But Eliza, we need to be smart about this. You have a business you're building. I have Sophie. We can't just dive in without thinking about how this affects everything else." "I know." She sighed, resting her head against his chest. "I just spent 6 weeks being careful and rational. I'm tired of being careful." "Me too. But being tired of it doesn't make it less important." She pulled back to look at him. "Okay, so we're doing this, but we're doing it right. What does that look like?" Lucas thought for a moment. "It means I need to tell Sophie. Really tell her. Not just hint that I have a friend. And you need to decide if you're ready to meet her." "I'm terrified of meeting her." "She's 7. She draws unicorns. There's nothing terrifying about her." "She's your daughter, Lucas. She's the most important person in your world. What if she doesn't like me?" "She will. But even if she's uncertain at first, we'll work through it. Together." Eliza nodded slowly. "And what about your world? The business dinners and charity galas and all the things that come with being Lucas Hale?" "We'll navigate those too. But Eliza, I need you to understand something. I'm not asking you to become someone you're not. I don't want you to. I just need you to be willing to try." "I can try." She looked up at him with those dark eyes that had become so familiar over phone calls and emails. "But you have to promise me something." "What?" "Promise me you won't hide me. I know I don't fit in your world, but I can't be a secret. I've been invisible my whole life. I can't be invisible to you too." The vulnerability in her voice made his chest ache. He cupped her face in his hands. "You could never be invisible to me. Never." She kissed him again, softer this time, like she was sealing a promise. "I should really go home now," she said when they broke apart, "before I forget every rational thought I've ever had." "Text me when you get there." "Yes." "And Lucas, thank you for tonight, for showing up, for everything." He watched her drive away, her taillights disappearing into Brooklyn traffic, and felt the weight of what they were starting settle over him. This wasn't going to be easy. Their lives didn't align naturally. But standing there in the cold November night, Lucas couldn't remember the last time something had felt this right. The conversation with Sophie happened the next morning over Saturday pancakes. Lucas had barely slept, running through different ways to explain to his 7-year-old daughter that he was dating someone. Every approach felt either too serious or too casual. Sophie was drowning her pancakes in syrup when he finally found the words. "So you know how we talked about my friend? The one I've been helping with her business?" Sophie looked up, immediately alert. "The one who makes you smile at your phone?" "Yes, her name is Eliza, and I want you to know that she's become more than just a friend." "Like a girlfriend?" The word sounded strange coming from his daughter. When had she even learned that term? "Yes, like a girlfriend." Sophie considered this while chewing her pancake. "Do you love her?" Lucas hadn't expected that question. Did he love Eliza? They'd known each other for 6 weeks. That wasn't enough time to fall in love with someone, except he thought about her constantly. Her success felt like his success. Her fears felt like his fears. When she laughed, something in him lit up. When she was stressed, he wanted to fix everything for her. I care about her very much, he said carefully. And I think maybe I could love her, but it's still early. Does she make you happy? Very happy. Then I want to meet her. Lucas felt relief flood through him. You do? Yes. If she's important to you, she should be important to me too. That's what families do. The simple wisdom nearly undid him. He reached across the table and squeezed his daughter's hand. When did you get so wise? I've always been wise. You just don't always notice. Fair point. Sophie returned to her pancakes, then looked up again. Daddy? Yeah, sweetheart? Is Eliza going to live with us? What? No, we just started dating. Nobody's moving in with anyone. But if she's your girlfriend, doesn't she have to live here? That's not how it works. People date for a long time before they even think about living together. How long? I don't know. There's no rule. Sophie thought about this. Can she come to my birthday party next month? Lucas hadn't even thought that far ahead. Sophie's birthday was 4 weeks away. Would Eliza want to come to a children's birthday party? Would it be too soon to bring her into family events? I'll ask her. But Sophie, I need you to understand something. Eliza and I are going to take things slowly. That means she won't be here all the time. It means we're still figuring out what this is. Okay. But Daddy? Yes? I'm glad you're happy, even if things are changing. He pulled her into a hug, this little person who'd been through so much loss already and was still open to letting someone new into their lives. I love you, kiddo. Love you too. Can I have more pancakes? And just like that, the conversation was over. Sophie returned to being 7, focused on syrup and Saturday morning cartoons, while Lucas marveled at how children could accept life's changes with a grace adults had forgotten. Meeting Sophie was scheduled for the following Saturday, a full week after the event. Lucas suggested lunch at a casual restaurant in the West Village, neutral territory where everyone could feel comfortable. Eliza spent the entire week in a state of controlled panic. What if she hates me? She asked Lucas during one of their nightly phone calls. She won't hate you. What if I say something wrong? What if I treat her too much like a kid, or not enough like a kid? Eliza, breathe. You're meeting a 7-year-old, not the Queen of England. The Queen of England I could handle. 7-year-olds are terrifying. They're honest. They'll tell you exactly what they think. Lucas laughed. That's exactly why she'll like you. You're honest too. I'm going to throw up. You're not going to throw up. You're going to be yourself, and Sophie is going to see what I see. Someone kind and smart and genuine. What if she asks why I'm not rich like you? The question caught Lucas off guard. Why would she ask that? Because kids notice things, and I'm obviously not from your world. What if she wonders why you're dating someone who drives a 15-year-old Honda? Lucas was quiet for a moment. If she asks, which I doubt she will, you tell her the truth, that people's worth isn't measured by their bank accounts. Easy for a billionaire to say. Eliza. Sorry, I'm spiraling. I do that when I'm nervous. I know, and it's okay, but I need you to trust me on this. Sophie is going to like you because of who you are, not what you have or don't have. Eliza took a shaky breath. Okay, I trust you. Saturday arrived too quickly. Eliza changed her outfit 4 times before settling on jeans and a sweater that felt like the right balance between trying too hard and not trying enough. She drove into Manhattan with her stomach in knots, parked near the restaurant, and sat in her car for 5 minutes trying to calm her racing heart. Her phone buzzed. We're here. Take your time. Sophie's coloring while we wait. The image of Sophie coloring made Eliza smile despite her nerves. She got out of the car and walked into the restaurant. Lucas and Sophie were sitting at a table near the window. Lucas stood when he saw her, his face lighting up in a way that made her forget her anxiety for a moment. Sophie looked up from her coloring book and studied Eliza with open curiosity. Hi, Eliza said, suddenly forgetting every planned greeting. Hi, Sophie replied. You're Eliza. I am, and you're Sophie. I am. Do you want to see my drawing? It's a unicorn detective solving a murder mystery. Eliza sat down across from her, genuinely interested. A murder mystery? That's pretty dark for a unicorn. Sophie's face lit up.
That's what Daddy said. But I think unicorns can solve dark cases too. They're not just for rainbows. I completely agree. What's the mystery? For the next 10 minutes, Sophie explained an elaborate plot involving a stolen diamond, a suspicious dragon, and a unicorn who used forensic magic to solve crimes.
Eliza listened with genuine attention, asking questions and making suggestions that made Sophie's eyes widen with excitement. Lucas watched them interact, something in his chest loosening with each passing minute. When the waiter came to take their order, Sophie announced, "Eliza should sit next to me so I can show her my other drawings." Eliza moved to the seat beside Sophie, and Lucas caught her eye across the table. She looked less terrified now, more at ease. Lunch continued easily. Sophie asked Eliza what she did for work, and Eliza explained event planning in terms a 7-year-old could understand. "So you plan parties?" Sophie asked. "Sort of. More like business events, but the same idea, making sure everything goes perfectly so people have a good time." "Could you plan my birthday party?" Lucas intervened quickly. "Sweetheart, Eliza plans professional events. Birthday parties are different." "Actually," Eliza said, "I would love to help with your birthday party." "If you want me to." Sophie beamed. "Really?" "Really, what kind of party do you want?" "Unicorns, obviously." "Obviously," Eliza agreed seriously. "Unicorn theme. Got it. What else?" They spent the rest of lunch planning Sophie's birthday party, with Sophie contributing increasingly elaborate ideas that Eliza somehow made sound feasible. Lucas watched them interact and felt something he hadn't felt in years, the possibility of family. After lunch, they walked through the village. Sophie held Eliza's hand like it was the most natural thing in the world, chattering about school and her friends and the book she was reading. When they finally parted ways, Sophie had a playdate she needed to get to. Sophie hugged Eliza goodbye. "I like you," she announced. "You can come to more lunches." "I'd like that," Eliza said, her voice thick with emotion. After Lucas had dropped Sophie at her friend's house, he texted Eliza. "She loved you." "I loved her." "Lucas, she's amazing." "She is. And you were perfect with her. I was so nervous I almost threw up in the parking lot. You hit it well. Can I see you tonight, after Sophie's asleep? Come over. I'll open a bottle of wine and we can talk about unicorn birthday parties. Best offer I've had all day." The next few weeks fell into a rhythm that felt surprisingly natural. Lucas and Eliza saw each other 3 or 4 times a week, sometimes just the two of them, sometimes with Sophie included. Eliza's business was growing steadily. The corporate event had led to 2 more bookings. She'd signed her second pro bono client, the bookstore she'd identified weeks ago. She was still working her other jobs, but she'd cut back her hours at the coffee shop. "I can see the light at the end of the tunnel," she told Lucas one evening while they were cooking dinner together in his kitchen. Sophie was at a sleepover, giving them rare alone time. "In 6 months, maybe less, I could actually make this my full-time job." Lucas was chopping vegetables while Eliza stirred a sauce. The domesticity of the moment struck him. How normal this felt. How right. "You should do it sooner," he said. "You're ready now." "I'm not ready financially. I need more steady income before I can quit my safety net." "What if you didn't have to worry about the safety net?" Eliza stopped stirring. "What do you mean?" Lucas set down his knife and turned to face her. "What if I helped you, just temporarily, until the business is stable, cover your rent for a few months so you can focus full-time on building your client base?" The expression on her face shifted from curious to guarded. "Lucas, no. Why not?" "Because I can't accept money from you. That changes everything." "It doesn't have to change anything. I have resources. You need support. It's logical." "It's not logical. It's charity. And I don't want to be your charity case." The words stung more than they should have. "That's not what this is." "Isn't it?" Eliza set down the spoon, her voice rising. "You're the billionaire swooping in to save the struggling woman. How is that not charity?" "It's helping someone I care about achieve their goals faster. What's wrong with that?" "Because I need to do this myself. Don't you understand? My whole life, people have told me I couldn't make it, that I'd never be more than the poor girl from Pennsylvania working dead-end jobs. If you just hand me success, then they were right. I didn't earn it." Lucas tried to stay calm. "You have earned it. You're the one doing the work. I'd just be removing financial stress so you could do that work more effectively." "No." Eliza's voice was firm. I appreciate the offer, I really do, but I have to do this my way. They stood in his kitchen, the sauce forgotten on the stove, the vegetables half chopped on the cutting board, facing each other across a divide that had appeared suddenly. Lucas wanted to argue, wanted to explain that accepting help wasn't weakness, but he could see in her expression that this was non-negotiable. Okay, he said finally. Your way. I respect that. Some of the tension left Eliza's shoulders. Thank you. But if you change your mind, I won't, but thank you for offering. They returned to cooking, the moment passing but leaving something unsettled between them. Later, after dinner, while they were cleaning up together, Eliza spoke quietly. I'm sorry for snapping at you. You didn't snap, you set a boundary. That's healthy. I know you were just trying to help. Lucas dried the plate she handed him. I was. But you're right that you need to build this yourself. I should have realized that. Eliza turned off the water and faced him. Here's the thing, I love that you want to help me. But if I'm going to be with you, really be with you, I need to know I'm your equal, not someone you're rescuing. The word love hung in the air between them, even though she'd used it casually. You are my equal, Lucas said, in every way that matters. Then trust me to build my business at my own pace. I do trust you. She smiled, some of the earlier tension dissolving. Good. Now, can we stop being serious and watch something mindless on TV? They moved to the couch, Eliza curling against his side while they watched a cooking competition show that required no emotional investment. But Lucas's mind was still on their conversation. He'd never been good at letting people struggle when he could fix things. His whole life was built around solving problems efficiently. But with Eliza, efficiency wasn't the goal. Her journey mattered as much as the destination. It was a lesson he was still learning. Sophie's birthday party happened on a sunny Saturday in early December. Eliza had transformed Lucas's apartment into a unicorn wonderland, decorations she'd found at party stores, borrowed from the event venue she'd worked with, and created herself late at night. There were unicorn balloons, a unicorn cake from Mrs. Chen's bakery, Eliza had coordinated that collaboration specifically, unicorn-themed games, and even a hired entertainer who did face painting. 15 7-year-olds descended on the apartment with the energy of a small tornado. Lucas watched Eliza coordinate the chaos with the same calm competence she'd shown at the corporate event. She kept the kids engaged, handled a minor meltdown when one child's face paint smudged, and made sure Sophie felt special throughout. Mrs. Chen, who'd been helping supervise, pulled Lucas aside. That girl is good for you, she said in her direct way. I know. Sophie loves her. I know that too. So what are you waiting for? Lucas looked at Mrs. Chen, confused. Waiting for what? To make this permanent. You love her. She loves you. Sophie loves her. What else do you need? Mrs. Chen, we've only been dating for 2 months. So? When you know, you know. Don't waste time being cautious when you should be living. She walked away before Lucas could respond, leaving him to think about her words. Did he love Eliza? He cared about her deeply. He thought about her constantly. His life felt fuller with her in it. But love? That was a big word with big implications. He watched her across the room, laughing with Sophie and her friends, and felt something settle into certainty. Yes, he loved her. The realization should have terrified him. Instead, it felt like coming home. After the party, after all the kids had been picked up, and the apartment was littered with unicorn decorations, Sophie was crashed on the couch in a sugar coma. Eliza was cleaning up despite Lucas's protests that she'd done enough. Thank you for this, he said, helping her gather trash. She had the best birthday. She deserved it. She's an amazing kid. She thinks you're pretty amazing too. Eliza smiled, dumping streamers into a trash bag. The feeling's mutual. Lucas watched her work, this woman who'd come into his life through a random mistake and changed everything. The words sat on his tongue, wanting to be said. But Sophie was there, even if she was half asleep. And 2 months felt too soon to say something so permanent. So instead he said, Stay tonight, after Sophie goes to bed. We can finish cleaning and just be together. Eliza looked at him, and something soft crossed her expression. I'd like that. Later, after Sophie was tucked into bed and the apartment was finally clean, Lucas and Eliza sat on his couch with glasses of wine, the city lights twinkling through the windows.
"Can I tell you something?" Eliza asked, her head resting on his shoulder. "Always. I'm falling in love with you. Actually, that's not accurate. I've already fallen. I'm in love with you." Lucas's heart rate kicked up. She'd said it. She'd said the words he'd been thinking all day. He shifted so he could look at her properly. "You are?" "Yes. I know it's fast. I know we probably should wait longer before saying things like this. But I'm tired of being careful. I love you, Lucas. And I love Sophie. And I love this life we're starting to build together." Lucas cupped her face in his hands. "I love you too. I was going to wait to tell you because I thought 2 months was too soon, but Mrs. Chen told me today that when you know, you know." Eliza laughed. "Mrs. Chen is wise. She really is." He kissed her then, deep and thorough, trying to communicate everything he felt. When they broke apart, Eliza was smiling. "So what happens now?" she asked.
"Now we keep doing what we're doing, building this together. No rush, no pressure, just us." "I like the sound of that." They stayed up late talking about the future, not making concrete plans, but exploring possibilities. What it might look like if Eliza eventually moved in. How they'd navigate Sophie getting older and needing more from both of them. The logistics of blending their very different lives. It was all theoretical, but it felt important. Felt like laying a foundation for something that could last. 3 months later, in early March, Eliza hit a milestone she'd been working toward since that first training program in Boston. She'd quit all her other jobs. Her consulting business was generating enough steady income that she could focus on it full time. She had 8 clients, a waiting list, and had just hired her first employee, James from the coffee shop, who'd decided he wanted to work in marketing more than finish his degree. Lucas took her to dinner at a fancy restaurant in Tribeca to celebrate. Not the Brazilian place where they'd first eaten together, but somewhere nicer, somewhere that felt appropriate for marking success. "I can't believe this is real," Eliza said, looking at the menu without seeing the prices first, a habit she'd only recently broken. 6 months ago, I was working 3 jobs and barely making rent. 6 months ago, you were also planning your first major event and learning to trust yourself," Lucas pointed out. "You've always had this in you." "Maybe, but I couldn't have done it without you." "You could have. It might have taken longer, but you would have gotten here." Eliza reached across the table and took his hand. "Still, thank you for believing in me when I didn't believe in myself." They ordered dinner and talked about her business plans. She wanted to expand beyond event planning into full-service brand consulting. She'd identified a gap in the market for businesses too small for major agencies, but too ambitious for basic freelancers. Lucas loved listening to her talk about her work, loved seeing her confidence grow with each success. After dinner, they walked through the city hand in hand. It was one of those perfect March evenings when winter was finally releasing its grip and spring felt possible. "Can I ask you something?" Eliza said as they walked past a park where early flowers were starting to bloom. "Of course." "Where do you see this going?" "Us, I mean." Lucas stopped walking and turned to face her. "Where do you want it to go?" I asked first. He thought about how to answer honestly. "I see it going everywhere. I see you moving in eventually, when you're ready. I see us building a life together. I see Sophie getting older with you as part of her world. I see marriage, maybe more kids if you want them. I see everything, Eliza." She looked up at him with tears in her eyes. "That's a lot of everything." "Too much?" "No, it's perfect, because that's what I see too." Lucas pulled her close, holding her in the middle of the sidewalk while people streamed past them. "I don't know the timeline," he said into her hair. "I don't know if that's 2 years from now or 5 years from now, but I know I want to build that future with you." "Me too," she whispered. They stood there holding each other, 2 people who'd met by accident and stayed by choice, finding their way towards something neither had been looking for, but both desperately needed. The proposal happened 6 months later in September, almost exactly a year after the suitcase mix-up. Lucas had planned it carefully, but not elaborately. He knew Eliza would hate anything too public or showy, so instead he did something simple. He took her back to the Brazilian restaurant where they'd had their first real conversation, the same table by the window if possible, which he'd arranged in advance, Sophie was in on the plan. She'd helped pick out the ring, a simple band with a single diamond, elegant but not ostentatious, something that fit Eliza's style perfectly. They ordered the same dishes they'd had a year ago. Lucas was so nervous he barely tasted his food. "You're quiet tonight?" Eliza observed. "Everything okay?" "Everything's perfect. I'm just thinking." About? About how different my life is now than it was a year ago. Eliza smiled. "Mine too. Best accidental suitcase swap ever." "Do you ever think about what would have happened if we'd noticed the mix-up immediately? If we'd never had to exchange luggage?" "Sometimes. But I don't think we would have had the same conversation we did. You wouldn't have read my notebook. I wouldn't have been nervous about meeting you. We would have just been two strangers passing in an airport. Fate works in mysterious ways." "Are you getting philosophical on me?" Lucas reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small box. "Maybe a little." Eliza's eyes widened when she saw the box. "Lucas, let me say this first," he interrupted gently. "A year ago, I was going through the motions of life, successful on paper, but empty in all the ways that mattered. Then I grabbed the wrong suitcase and met someone who reminded me what it felt like to actually live." He opened the box, revealing the ring. Eliza's hand flew to her mouth. "You challenged me," Lucas continued. "You made me better. You loved Sophie like she was your own. You built something amazing while refusing to let me make it easy for you. You made me remember that the best things in life are the ones you have to fight for." Tears were streaming down Eliza's face now. "Eliza Moore, I love you. Sophie loves you. We want you to be part of our family officially. Will you marry me?" The restaurant had gone quiet around them. Other diners were watching, but Lucas only saw Eliza. She was nodding before she could speak. "Yes. Yes, of course, yes." Lucas slipped the ring onto her finger, then stood and pulled her into his arms. The restaurant erupted in applause, but they barely noticed. "I love you," Eliza said against his shoulder. "I love you so much." "I love you too." They kissed right there in the restaurant, surrounded by strangers celebrating their moment, and Lucas felt complete in a way he hadn't since before his first wife died. This was different, he knew. He'd loved his first wife, but that had been young love, built on shared dreams and inexperience. This was adult love, clear-eyed, intentional, built on mutual respect and genuine partnership. When they finally pulled apart, Eliza was laughing and crying simultaneously. "Sophie's going to lose her mind," she said. "She already knows. She helped pick the ring." "Of course she did. She's been asking me when we're getting married for 3 months. Apparently she's more perceptive than we gave her credit for." They sat back down, neither able to stop smiling. Eliza kept looking at her ring, then at Lucas, then back at the ring, like she couldn't quite believe it was real. "Can I tell you something?" she said eventually. "Always. That first day when you came to return my suitcase, I thought you were the most intimidating person I'd ever met. You had this aura of someone who'd conquered the world. And I was just me. You were never just anything. I know that now. But back then, I couldn't imagine us in the same universe, let alone the same life. And now you're asking me to marry you." "Now I'm asking you to marry me," Lucas confirmed. "Because somewhere between that suitcase mix-up and now, I realize that you're the bravest person I've ever met. You fight for everything you have. You don't take shortcuts. You demand to be treated as an equal even when it would be easier to accept help. And that's exactly the kind of partner I want beside me." Eliza wiped her eyes. "You're going to make me cry through this entire dinner." "That's allowed at your own engagement dinner." They finished their meal in a happy daze, then walked through the city the same way they had after their first lunch together. But this time, Eliza had a ring on her finger, and Lucas had the certainty that this was just the beginning. The wedding happened the following spring, a small ceremony in a converted loft space in Brooklyn. Eliza planned it herself, of course, though Lucas had offered to hire the best wedding planner in the city. She'd declined with a kiss and reminded him that event planning was literally her job now. The guest list was intimate, fewer than 50 people. Sophie was the flower girl, taking her responsibilities with the seriousness only an 8-year-old could manage. Mrs. Chen was there, beaming with pride like this was all her doing. James and Maria from the coffee shop. A few of Lucas's close colleagues and friends. Eliza's sister, who'd flown in from Pennsylvania despite their complicated relationship, because some moments transcended old hurts. Lucas stood at the altar, a simple arch decorated with spring flowers, and watched Eliza walk down the aisle. She wore a simple dress, elegant but not ostentatious, with her hair down the way he loved it. She was carrying wildflowers instead of an elaborate bouquet. She looked perfect. When she reached him, she was smiling with tears in her eyes. "Hi," she whispered. "Hi," he whispered back. The ceremony was short and personal. They'd written their own vows, keeping them private, just for each other. Lucas promised to support her dreams while respecting her independence. To love her daughter, because Sophie was theirs now, not just his, with everything he had. To remember that the best things in life were the ones you didn't plan for. Eliza promised to challenge him when he needed it and support him always. To be a partner, not a dependent. To love his daughter as her own. To remember that their different backgrounds made them stronger, not weaker. When the officiant pronounced them married, Sophie cheered loudly from her spot in the front row, making everyone laugh. The reception was held in the same space, transformed into a celebration that felt uniquely them, elegant but warm, sophisticated but genuine. During their first dance, Eliza looked up at Lucas with wonder in her eyes. "We did it," she said. "We did. I'm married to Lucas Hale. That's insane. I'm married to Eliza Moore Hale. That's perfect." She'd decided to hyphenate her name, keeping her identity while joining his. It felt right. Later in the evening, Sophie pulled Eliza aside while Lucas was talking to some guests. "Can I call you Mom now?" she asked, suddenly shy in a way she rarely was. Eliza knelt down to Sophie's level, her heart so full she thought it might burst. "Only if you want to. I'm not trying to replace your first mom." "I know, but she's gone and you're here, and you love me and Daddy. So I think that makes you my mom." Eliza pulled Sophie into a hug, not caring that she was crying at her own wedding. "Then yes, you can call me Mom. I would love that." Sophie hugged her back fiercely. "Love you, Mom." "Love you too, sweetheart." When Lucas found them a few minutes later, both wiping their eyes, he raised an eyebrow questioningly. "She called me Mom," Eliza explained. Lucas's expression softened. He pulled both of them into a hug, his wife and his daughter, the two people who made his world complete. The party continued late into the night. People danced and laughed and celebrated this unlikely love story. The billionaire and the struggling consultant who'd met through a suitcase mix-up and built something real from that accident. Near the end of the evening, Eliza found herself standing by the window overlooking Brooklyn, Lucas coming up behind her and wrapping his arms around her waist. "Happy?" he asked, deliriously. "Any regrets?" She turned in his arms to face him. "Not a single one. You?" "Only that I didn't grab the wrong suitcase sooner." Eliza laughed and kissed him. "I think we found each other exactly when we were supposed to." "Maybe so." They stood there watching the city lights, two people from different worlds who'd proven that connection mattered more than circumstance, that love could bridge any divide, that sometimes the best things in life started with mistakes. A year and a half ago, Lucas had been a lonely billionaire going through the motions. Eliza had been a struggling worker with dreams bigger than her budget. Now they were partners, building a life together that honored both their pasts while creating something entirely new. Sophie joined them at the window, squeezing between them. "Can we go home now?" she asked, yawning. "I'm tired." "Sure, sweetheart," Lucas said. "Let's go home." Home. The word meant something different now than it had 18 months ago. It wasn't just a place. It was the three of them together, wherever they were. They said goodbye to their guests, thanked everyone for coming, and drove home through the spring night, Lucas, Eliza, and Sophie. A family built from chance and choice, from mistakes and miracles, from the simple act of two strangers grabbing the wrong luggage on an ordinary Tuesday evening. And as Lucas unlocked the door to their apartment, Eliza had officially moved in 3 months ago, he realized that Mrs. Chen had been right all along. When you know, you know. And he'd known since the moment he'd read that notebook full of dreams and determination, since the first phone call when they'd talked for 40 minutes about nothing and everything, since the afternoon by the Hudson River when he'd admitted this mattered. He'd known Eliza was his future. And now, with a ring on her finger and Sophie calling her mom and a whole life stretched out ahead of them, that future was finally here. Perfect. Unexpected. Exactly right.